Welcome, everybody, to another fantastic episode of the Game Informer Show. This is the show where we inform you about games, sometimes ourselves as well. I'm your host, Ben Reeves, joined today on the show, Kimberly Wallace.
Hey, what's up? 2 weeks in a row.
2 weeks in a row. Blake Hester, not 2 weeks in a row. It's actually been a while since we've had you on.
Hi, Ben. I couldn't help but notice you didn't say anything about my haircut.
That's right, and I won't. And Alex Stadnick, how you doing?
Good. You didn't say anything about my haircut either.
Oh, it looks so good.
Thank you.
I
thought
get
you'd
your
like
haircut
that.
every week.
Thank you.
Now that's interesting that you did that.
And guess what, guys? We have an extra special guest with us today. Somebody who's not from GI. You may know him. You probably love him if you do. Greg Kasavin from Supergiant Games. How's it going?
Hello. Doing well. Nor any comments about my haircut.
Oh, did you get a cut? I didn't notice. I'm sorry. Well played,
Thanks
sir.
for having me on the show.
Yeah, well, a pleasure to have you. If Supergiant Games, obviously they're well known for creating games like Bastion, recently Hades, which was a big hit here. Congrats, by the way, on the release of Hades.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It was a well-earned reward. You won a couple of Game of the Year awards. You were on our top 10 list of the year, number 2, in fact. Hopefully that's not a slight.
No, not one bit. Thank you so much. Yeah.
But I love the game as well. So congrats on releasing that game.
Yeah, thank you. We continued to be blown away by the response to it because we'd been working on it in early access for a good couple of years, and it was well liked in early access, but that experience didn't really prepare us for the extent to which it kind of blew up following its 1.0 launch, which was back in September. So it's like more than, it's 6 or 7 months ago. But I think all of us feel like we've been, at least personally, I feel like I've been in a time warp. It does not feel, when you say it's like over half a year ago, I'm like, that sounds wild to me.
That's crazy.
And yet it is mathematically correct.
Well, and I remember when it first came out on early access. What was that, like 2 years ago or something?
It was, it launched in December 2018. Yeah, so it's been a good chunk of time.
So depending on how you cut it, it's like, man, that game's been out. Get multiple releases kind of in a way. Is it because this is your first game releasing in early access?
Yeah.
Was it? I'm sure it's different than just releasing a game in one go. Does it feel more exhausting in a sense because you're constantly updating it and it's out there, or do you appreciate having that feedback of fans playing it the whole time?
No, it's a good question. Like we owe so much. I think so much of the game's success is owed to the early access process. It's like one of the big things that changed between this project and the previous 3 games we worked on. Our team did grow. We went from 12 to about 20 people, which as a percentage increase is pretty substantial. Though the way that we kind of reconfigured our development process around early access, I think resulted in the game being kind of as big as it was, and a lot of the quality, both on the technical and content side, I think just emerged as part of that process. So it was like, I think if you could, like sort of chart the intensity on a graph, I think on a standard game project, it may be kind of like really low for a while while you're in pre-production, figuring out what you're doing, and then toward the end, as you're trying to pull everything together and wrap everything up, it kind of goes off the charts and things are super wild, just desperately trying to make the game work. And now that you have all the pieces. The idea with early access was like, let's keep the game playable in like kind of a semi-shippable state all through development. So the intensity is just kind of more middle of the road. And because we're kind of like shipping versions of it every couple of months. So, I have my own background in the gaming press actually, and part of it reminded me of that in a bit of, having more frequent deadlines. And that has both good and, there's pressure that comes with having deadlines, but there's structure that comes with having deadlines as well. So in short, it was definitely an intense development, but it felt, it had like a rhythm to it that was really helpful I think, and we were able. So it felt more like a marathon than like a crazy sprint or something like that.
Yeah. You mentioned being part of the games press. Yeah, you go back to people may remember you from GameSpot days, I believe, which was great, I'm sure. And you're one of the rare people who've worked in journalism and then transitions into the game development side. What do you think it is, just knowing both sides of the worlds, walking between worlds there, that a lot of game press people still don't understand about the game development world?
I thought it's funny. I thought you were going to ask the other way around, like what do game developers not understand about the press? I think the
you can answer either question.
Yeah, I happen to think the gaming press understands game development pretty well at like a high, like you hear the stories, you know what a lot of the trials and tribulations are at this. I think there's like more transparency among at least some developers. So there's more awareness of what making games is really like. I think one of the things though is like I've always felt that game developers have a pretty strong sense of what they're shipping. Like they know what game that they have. So it's always kind of surprising to me. This sounds totally hypocritical because I was just saying how surprised I was at the launch. So I don't know, maybe I have to rethink this. But what I was going to say is like, I think game developers kind of know what they have. They know the strengths and weaknesses of their game, and they're just kind of waiting to see the external validation or sort of condemnation, as the case may be, of what they did when you finally ship a game and reviews start coming in. But yeah, on the other hand, you never can tell. We thought we knew what we had, but we didn't anticipate the kind of excitement around the intensity of the excitement around our launch.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was going to say. Is like, I think when you produce anything that you're proud of, you're like, I think this is good. I think people are going to like it, but you probably don't understand the level in which, the feedback will be. Like when you guys released Hades, I'm sure you were like, I think we'll get good reviews on this, but you probably didn't expect Game of the Year awards and all this big stuff, maybe, right?
That's right. Yeah, especially when it comes to awards in particular, it's one of those things where you can control the quality of your own work, but you can't control the quality of other people's work. And when it comes to Game of the Year awards, it's a competition, right? So like you may have done your best effort and put forth something good, but that doesn't stop any number of developers from around the world from busting out far superior efforts to your own. And I remember thinking, back in our Bastion days, our first game, this is back in 2011, when we were kind of blown away by the positive reaction to that game, and it ended up winning kind of downloadable game, indie game of the year awards that year. But it was the year that the game Journey was supposed to come out, and it got delayed until 2012. And I remember thinking, boy, I can't wait for Journey. I hope it takes all the time it needs, but selfishly, boy, am I glad that Journey got delayed, because I have a feeling that game is going to, wreck everybody. And it proceeded to win it kind of semi-swept the Game of the Year awards in 2012. And that was one of the first, I think that was the first instance of a game from like a smaller studio basically going, mano a mano against big AAA titles and just beating them, not just in indie game type of categories, but in full on Game of the Year. So
yeah,
if Journey came out when Bastion came out, Bastion would not have been nearly as acclaimed, I think.
Oh, that's interesting to think about.
Yeah.
The what ifs. You are, just to give some people, our listeners, if they're not super familiar, you are, one of your roles at Supergiant Games is as a writer, and some of your games have a lot of writing in them, it turns out. I'm just curious, that process. Are you a person who really, you must like writing on some level, but I've heard a lot of developers say that I don't really like writing. I like having written. Is that kind of how you feel? Is it a hard process?
Yeah, that's funny. I mean, I chuckled when I do love writing, but it's like I sometimes describe it as like an exorcism process. You must sort of get it out of your system. And it's not and the exorcism analogy, suggests that it's not always like a pleasant experience of getting it out of your system properly. but yeah, it's very strange because not only do I not always love, being in the act of writing, I don't even always love having written, right? Because you're not sure, like, is it going to work and so on. You're just kind of keep moving forward. But I think writing is one of those things that those who do it just feel some sort of impulse toward it as an outlet of some sort. And for me, I become very attached to the characters I'm working with. They become, it sounds weird, but they become like my friends or something, like I care about them in a genuine way, and I come to feel sort of a burden of responsibility around them, where it's like if I don't sort of complete their story, then their story will not be told, and I have to. So I feel an obligation to follow through on what I started, I think, when it comes to things like that. But I do absolutely, I'm so grateful to work at a studio that like doesn't question the value of narrative in games, at least not overall. And we've just always looked for ways to combine, to kind of fuse the narrative experience and the play experience together in ways that feel distinct to games, and that's just made it endlessly interesting, I think, for us to work on our games.
Yeah, it's interesting hearing you talk about, these characters, I kind of feel like they're real people. Okay.
Yeah.
Can you hear them talking to you now, Greg?
Maybe not right this second, since I'm on a separate call, but I think when I'm in my rhythm with it, it does feel like, and this sort of takes me back to, again, like to my press days. It feels more like transcribing an interview or something like that, rather than like making stuff up. It's like, well, this is what, once you know the characters well enough and you place them in a certain situation, there can only be one way, that they would act in that situation. Like someone you know very well, take your best friend or a sibling or something like that. What happens if they're at a restaurant and they get their food served cold or something like that? You might know somebody who's like gets flippant about it, sends it back, berates the waiter. Someone else might just gobble it up and say like, well, that's life, and I don't want to give the waiter a hard time and stuff like that. So I seek to have that understanding with the characters, and then it just starts to like flow from there. And that part is satisfying. And then we worked with a voice cast and stuff like that. It was wonderful. So Gen Z, our art director, Darren Korb, our audio director, like collaborating with those folks, watching our characters come to life. It's a real treat for me. That's kind of what it's all about. Those moments.
For sure. Greg, if Meg starts to call on you from Hades, can you give her my number? Asking for
I will do that.
Thank you. I appreciate
that. I usually don't go. It seems like there are a lot of people horny on main for the characters in Hades. And I did always really appreciate Meg's voice actor. I don't know who that was, but like her voice is really good, by the way.
Avalon Penrose. Yeah, she was awesome. She was one of those. It was one of those moments where like her audition, kind of get it. Her performance like added something to the character that we didn't even know was there on the page, and that's like you have a winner in voice talent when it has that quality, when it like sort of deepens the character just from hearing how the actor interprets the character in that way. So she definitely had that.
Yeah, she's got an awesome voice. I don't know, you've been talking, speaking of voices, Kim has one, and you talked a lot with Kim recently this month because we did a big feature on Supergiant Game. Kind of looking back, this is the 10-year anniversary of Bastion. I don't know, Kim, do you want to share anything about that feature specifically that's in the magazine?
I mean, yeah, we're also blowing up it on the website as well over the course of the week. But yeah, we went through all the games that they've created and all, going back to Bastion, which has its 10-year anniversary coming up in July, all the way through Hades, but kind of discussing how the studio approached each of those projects and learned from each one. And God, you guys have such an interesting story and way that you do stuff. And one of the things that Greg in particular, that I thought was so fascinating was when you guys go and you start working on your ideas, like Greg's the one who pulls everything together with what the artists are working on and excited about and their ideas, and then, you know, what gameplay people, you know, they're doing, and then finds a way to make it work within a story and the world building. And that's just amazing that you can take all those different elements, the music, and kind of, you know, with it and make it into, you know, an idea that works and has everybody excited and involved that way.
Yeah, I thank you. I shouldn't take over much credit in that, because it's absolutely it's all everyone on the team, you know, pulling together, and it's not like everyone is working in complete isolation, right? Mm-hmm. But one of the benefits of the narrative is that it can sort of triangulate elements of the game that otherwise might not have a clear connection, and it could make them feel more connected than they would have, you know, in the absence of some bit of narrative context or something like that. So it's a really fun part of the process to like look for those connections, and it's how our worlds come together. Like it's not just that we like so many of the little details that players often get excited about are things that came about in like a happenstance way originally during development, and then we saw, you know, some opportunity in them and kept building on them. So we kind of riff on each other in that way, and some of you know, Darren and Amir have an actual like background in being in bands together, so we sometimes use that like band analogy of like, I think everybody just sort of reinforces each other's work.
Do they ever break out into song in the middle of like a development?
You know, Darren does not do that, surprisingly. He would be the one might expect to just break out in song, but no, he just I mean, Darren is amazing to work with. He does all our music, he does all our sound effects, he directs the voice recording sessions. And he is also the voice of Zagreus and Skelly in Hades. So we even discovered that he's a wonderful voice actor on our latest project. So he seemingly has no end to his talents.
Yeah. And not to keep labeling or throwing praise at you, don't let your head get too big. You can't walk out the door. But like, your music in your game is always really good. And do you guys ever think about maybe we should just make like a musical game, or what does that look like?
You know, I think I think we kind of considered Transistor a musical game to some extent. The main character is a singer, but it's not full on like characters breaking into song. We certainly bounce a lot of wacky ideas around. I'm sure something like that came up at some point. Though you know, one constant for sure across our games is that the music is really, like, we consider it really important. So we're glad it ultimately comes across that way. But from our standpoint, you know, we value kind of the tone and the atmosphere of our game so much. It's one of the first things we're trying to do when starting a new project is like figure out the tone and the vibe of it. And the music is often what helps crystallize that. Darren is often the very first person on the team to have like concrete kind of shippable type stuff. He'll have a piece of music that's kind of based on the vibe that maybe we only talked about, and we'll be like, yep, I want to be in whatever game sounds like that. And so Darren's work, you know, is hugely influential to our whole creative process from the very beginning in that way. And we're just always thinking about how we can like use the music as part of the story and the whole experience, you know, not just kind of hit play on it and leave it going like that.
For sure.
Cool.
I know we have to get to the playlist really quick, but I'm curious. This is a video nerd question. You guys, for people who don't know, did a no-clip documentary on the development of Hades, which is Danny O'Dwyer, formerly of GameSpot as well.
Big fan of the show.
Yeah. He's maybe been on it once before. But you guys made the decision to let cameras in on what I would argue is one of the more stressful times of your guys' development. Looking back at that now, like, do you regret that extra level of stress? Are you happy it's there now? Like, what was that experience like?
Oh no, I don't have like I have zero. I have like, if there could be a number that is less than 0, I would have that number of regrets about working with the no clip thing. I'm so glad. I'm so glad Danny and Jeremy, his colleague, agreed to do it, and they followed our development for more than 2 years, and it's just the sort of thing where we never would have stopped to pause and kind of capture any of it on our own, at least certainly not anywhere near that level of depth. But for us, it was like, in the spirit, it's back to the early access thing. It was like trying to get into this new mindset of, you know what, instead of doing everything in secret like we've kind of done in the past, let's do things more out in the open. Let's communicate more with our players, and try and find a balance between, having a very transparent development process, but still being able to like hold back surprises in terms of the game itself. So that we don't, like, being transparent doesn't just mean spoiling the entire game for people, basically. And NoClip was like such a big part of that. I think we all got like we got used to it pretty fast, and we made sure that members of it was like pretty like optional for people on team, basically. So on a case-by-case basis, if people were more or less comfortable about it, they could opt out of it. But yeah, I think we're all like really glad that it's a thing that exists now, and it was exciting to be a part of it, because like the nature of it is that we didn't know how the story was going to end. Hopefully that's what made it interesting to follow. So it's I'm glad it all worked out, needless to say.
Awesome.
For sure.
Greg, really appreciate you having on the show, and thanks for sharing all that insight. Let's see, what are we, like 25 minutes into the podcast? Maybe we should set this thing up. Yeah. I think you probably can check the runtime on this thing. I think it's pretty big. A big show this week. And that's because not only are we talking to Greg, we're going to be talking later in this episode about the Game Informer's newest cover, Resident Evil Village. We wrote a big feature on that in the magazine. We're going to break that down here in just a little bit. And then later at the end of the show, we have a second interview with Matthew Haig, aka Nadeshot. You might be familiar with his work in the Call of Duty scene as a pro player. He also founded 100 Thieves. We talk a little bit about that process, and he's teamed up with Excedrin, the aspirin company. Is that technically aspirin? Is that fair to say Excedrin is aspirin?
Maybe.
Is that offensive to somebody?
Maybe do Excedrin. I don't know.
It seems like a weird team up. So we talk about like what's going on there. So that's a fun interview. So stick around for that as well. But first, as always, we should talk about our playlist, the things we've been playing, games we've been checking out, things we like. Blake, do you want to go first?
Yeah. Y'all ever heard of Pac-Man?
It's the Italian plumber, right?
What?
Yeah, that's right. No, I've been playing Pac-Man 99, free on the Nintendo Switch, ostensibly, which I believe is in the same vein as like Tetris 99 and Mario 35,
Correct.
Which I did not play, but I played this one for review. It's essentially Pac-Man with a slight battle royale twist. So you are playing against, as the name implies, 98 other Pac-Men, and you don't encounter them directly. You're basically just, I think it's similar to, what was that game? Pac-Man Championship Edition?
DX or whatever?
Yeah.
So
it pulls some mechanics from that, where it's not just like the bare bones Pac-Man experience from 4 decades on. There's like, you, rather than eating all the pellets and the power pellets, you actually can recharge those by eating the fruit on the map, and attacking ghosts will send enemy Pac-Men at the 98 other Pac-Men. It's very fun, I think, for the most part. And I feel like when I was playing this, Ben, you listen to me here, I had to create my own fun in a lot of ways, because there were numerous.
I mean, Pac-Man's fun, man. You don't enjoy Pac-Man?
Well, okay. I have no issues with the bare bones Pac-Man, but I often felt I was running up against the game and it limiting how much I understood and could engage with it. So, for example, there are tied to the right analog stick and the face buttons are what I presume are attacks, like specific attacks and then ways you want to attack. But the game has zero tutorial, and the visual information it's giving you is never super clear how those are affecting other players. So eventually I just abandoned trying to ever figure it out and playing in the ways I had fun playing it. Which is fine on the one hand, because I like the game and I was able to get a chicken dinner battle royale a couple times.
Were you?
Not
Congrats, man.
Nice.
Thank you. While not engaging with half of the game's mechanics.
Yeah, that's
But
weird.
on the other hand, it sucks that the game just, I don't know if it assumes you'll figure it out and then it's just a failure of actually teaching you through visual info or what it is. But that felt frustrating. Like I was kind of banging my head against it for a lot of the playtime. Like, what am I supposed to be doing outside of Pac-Man? You know, like there's obviously this whole chunk of the game that I don't understand. But it is what it is.
I mean, it sounds cool. Like if you played Tetris 99, it's very similar to that.
Yeah.
That you're in that game, you're playing Tetris with 98 other people, and then you're sending attacks their way.
Yeah.
To be the last man standing, this one's like same concept, and you're sending attacks to other people, but some of that like mechanics are obscured.
Yeah. What I have found, and this sounds like a slight against the game, but I mean it as a compliment. It is possibly the best podcast YouTube game I have right now.
Quick, right now, while you're listening to this podcast.
It's a game I love to play while I'm doing something else. You know, like, I want to listen to this hour and a half podcast, but I want to do something with my hands, or I want to play a game, but not give it, 110% of my brain. It just fits so perfectly there because the matches, even if you win a match, you are probably not spending more than 5 minutes in these matches. And even if you lose a match, like reloading is so quick that it just like fits that perfect void in my life. And even since finishing the review, I have been picking it up constantly while watching or listening to other things. I play it on mute because I think the music is terrible. So that's very easy. I don't feel like I'm missing out on anything there. Yeah, I think that.
Wait, are you playing it right now?
I think the it's free on Switch for the most part.
Well, like Tetris, you had to be part of the online program to get it.
Well, there's that. But the Pac-Man 99, the base version, the Battle Royale online is free. The time attack,
if you have the online.
Yeah. Sorry.
If you subscribe to Nintendo's online service, which is like $5 a month, it's pretty cheap.
But the time attack, score attack, and like CPU modes where you're basically playing the Battle Royale against the computer. And I think all three of those are single player. And then there's also private lobbies you can play with friends. All of that is behind a $15 DLC charge, which I don't know exactly how I feel about it. I bought them and didn't find them super compelling compared to, the main offering. I'm not sure. I don't want to like say it's not worth that amount of money or anything like that, but
is it 15 for all of them or each? It's
15 for all of them.
Okay.
But it is like, when you think about it, it is the bulk of the playable content, Mm-hmm. It's not what I spend the most time playing, but it is a ton of that game that is, locked away for $15. And that's a little weird, but I don't know. I think if you have Switch Online, like Pac-Man 99, that base mode is awesome to pick up and play.
Check it out. It's a good idea.
I'm not familiar with Mario 35 or Tetris 99. I mean, I know what they are. I just never played them. But friends I have that were super into those games are also very hot on Pac-Man 99. So I think like if you're a fan of those, this is definitely worth checking out. And if you need a podcast game, my God, I'm telling you, you got to get this thing.
It's such a fun idea. Like, what other games can they do this with at this point? I mean, there's got to be a couple.
Yeah,
Anything you guys would want to see.
Sounds like
I was listening to the Giant Bombcast yesterday, and they were talking about this thing now that like Namco has given one of their IPs to the Nintendo Battle Royale thing. Like, does it open up other third-party developers to do stuff? I don't know what I personally would want, but I think it would be interesting to play more of these, because isn't the idea that they're like putting them out for limited amount of times, then taking them down and then putting a new one out?
Just Mario 35, which people bemoaned and was wondering why they were killing Mario for Pac-Man. But no, you can still play Tetris 99, and I do on occasion. It's very, very fun. So
there we go. I don't know, Bomberman, that'd be cool.
Original.
Speaking of
Zelda,
playing
maybe?
games while podcasting, Greg, I'm curious, as a game developer, is the idea of somebody playing a podcast or listening to a podcast while playing your game, does that sound sacrilegious to you, or how do you guys feel about people doing that?
No, we don't. Like, I think we're like, hey, if you're playing our game, thank you. It kind of doesn't go farther than that. We don't know what are all the ways. I think our best expression of this is that despite like the high amount of voiceover in our games, they're like, the story is delivered largely through voice. They always have a voice slider. You can turn all the voices off. Like, hey, if that's how you want to play, if you enjoy the game more that way, more power to you. So yeah, we think that we imagine some sort of kind of optimal experience, but it's like the part of the nature of games and why they're fun. It's like, I think experiencing them in the way that makes you comfortable, the way that makes you enjoy them the most, that's going to have variance. So I think that idea of like a podcast game, I've never heard that before, but it makes a ton of, I am that way as well. Like, I have trouble even watching like shows and stuff. Just, I don't know. I think it's just growing up playing a lot of games and stuff.
Sure.
So I want to be doing something else if I can. I appreciate the idea of games like that where you don't have to, as you say, you don't have to be like fully engaged, listening to every word, agonizing over every decision. You could just play it more instinctively.
Yeah.
All right,
It's like a
you got you off the hook. You're okay doing that.
It's like, honestly, a genre I seek out more and more as I get older. Is like, what can I play while, I got to work 8, 9, 10 hours a day or whatever. But there's movies and podcasts and shows I want to watch and games I want to play. Being able to combine a few of those and get them out of the way at the same time, is becoming increasingly valuable for me. And this game, good example of that.
Yeah, you should try going to the bathroom while shopping. Speaking of combining things, I don't know. Is that a good joke? I don't think so.
No. Can you edit that one out, Alex?
Hey, Kim.
Writing it down.
Do you have any weird, obscure games that you've been playing?
Of course, that's all I do, right? Is play weird and obscure games.
K-Star, baby.
K-Star. Actually, yeah, I've recently been playing a visual novel that got recommended to me, and it just made its way to Switch. It's called The House in Fata, Morgana. And in it, you wake up like with no memory of who you are in this weird cursed mansion. And you go through, and this maid takes you through different stories throughout different times in the mansion. So you see the stories from 4 different perspectives and are trying to figure out how they're all connected and what's going on here, which is the really interesting thing, because you'll start picking up on certain things. You're like, wait, why is this person also in this time period, and so on forth, and going back and seeing what. Like I said, I like piecing together the memory, but if there's some really it's just messed up stories here. Like, it's all tragedy. Everybody who lives in this mansion has met not a great fate in their life. And some of the stories, they really take you for a loop. And at this point, I was telling my friend, sometimes it feels like it's too much, but I'm like, I have to see how this ends. I have to see what happens, because it's so weird. And you just know there's this huge payoff with how it can connects to everything, because that's all that everybody has ever like. Kim, you'll love this game. You got to play it. You just have to see how it pans out. So yeah, it was originally on PC and got like really big as like one of the best visual novels you can play in the last few years. And eventually like it also made its way to PS4 last year. Now it's finally on Switch, and I'm having a lot of fun with it. It's pure visual novel, like I said, and like I said, you're trying to figure out what is going on, that everybody in this mansion has fell into some tragic existence, and the writing's really good. And it's the way that this game also uses music for a visual novel. I didn't want to forget that, because it has some of the best use of sound that I've ever heard in a visual novel, to be honest with you. Like everything amplifies each scenes, the sound effects to kind of the different you go, like when you go in the garden, you have like this really like playful tune, because like two of the characters when they're kids always played there, and it adds a lot to the atmosphere. So if you are into creepy visual novels that are kind of like, wow, there's a lot of messed up stuff going on here, but I can't look away now, I would recommend playing through this and seeing what happens, because like I'm finished 2 of the 4 arcs, and I'm going to play the whole thing. But yeah, it just came out last week on Switch.
Yeah, it's always interesting to me. I never got into visual novels, but I love, I don't know if there's a fair comparison, comic books, and it just feels like they should line up, right? Like if I like reading pictures with words, like shouldn't I also like visual novels?
I would think.
There may be more wordy. They're like more words, less visual, like maybe on the balance than comics are so bite-sized, and
That's
visual
true.
novels can be pretty dense, but and I think the subject matter is often pretty different. Like if you grew up with like Marvel comics or something like that, like visual novels I think tell really different kinds of stories than that.
Yeah.
In general, but yeah.
It's also a weird thing, is like I tend not to enjoy reading on a screen.
Yeah.
Because I do that all day most of the time, and I just kind of wish I could. I don't know. You can play these games some of these games on your tablet or maybe a mobile device. So maybe that's
print out. Just print out.
Oh,
a bunch of
there you go.
screens.
I'll print out the code. That'll work, right?
Yeah, that'll work.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the Phoenix Wright games are like a really good kind of gateway into the realm of visual novels. Like I think a lot of people played Phoenix Wright before they knew that visual novel sort of name, that genre name, and they're kind of, a lot of them are like old school PC point and click adventure games also. So if players have been around long enough to have fond memories of those, it's like I think a lot of them have evolved into this format.
Oh man, I never thought of it that way, but yeah, you're right. There's totally a lineage of that. Cool. Well, that was the House of Fata Morgana. Am I getting that right?
Yes, the house in Fata Morgana.
Sounds worth playing. Checking out. Alex, what about you? What have you been playing?
Oh baby. The one of my most anticipated games of the year dropped last week, and that, my dear friends, is Outriders. And sorry, I'm just noting it in my notebook here. I have an incredible love-hate relationship with this game right now. As you can see, it's on my shirt. Really like that. I love this game when it is firing on all cylinders and you are playing it in 3-player co-op. We got hints of that from our demos and early playthroughs, right? But like having it not just playing those same spaces with friends, those powers synergize so well. And I feel like it's another type of thing to Blake's point about podcast games, where this is a game where it demands enough coordination and strategy out of you, especially when you get into higher world tiers where you feel engaged. But for me, I'm okay with half paying attention to the story and just like running through the enemy types in this, because those controls feel so satisfying. It is really, People Can Fly did an awesome job of translating what I love about Gears of War and Mass Effect and made it into their own space. And it just feels like chunky and heavy and the weapons feel great, and I'm here for it. I've been trying to log on with my buddies as much as I can.
You're saying chunky and heavy is like a good thing?
Yeah. Thick boys unite, baby.
Okay.
But like, you know, when you're playing something like Gears or Halo, you want something that feels weighty in your hands, right? And I think they nail that with the weapon development in this game. And I haven't even got to the legendaries yet. I took a little bit of a break from games this weekend. But I'm starting to really like get into the more like, I'll bleep myself later, but like the badass like armor sets, and it's like, oh, combining that with the higher level like Devastator powers, which I'm team Devastator, baby, all the way. I really like Trickster, but like Devastator is that tank power fantasy that I really enjoy.
How is it different? I've been playing Pyromancer.
Mm-hmm.
What does the Devastator do that the other classes don't do?
So each class obviously has different like special abilities, right? You know, I'm playing on Xbox, so like left bumper, right bumper, combine the two. And what I really enjoy about Outriders is, on top of everything I've talked about, is the way it gives back health when you're fighting all these people, because me as a Devastator, I have to be within 4 meters, 5 meters of an enemy when I kill them to get health back. Whereas Pyro, you have to mark your enemies, and if someone kills them, then you get health back. So distance doesn't necessarily make a difference, but those are different enough play styles where it's like people who appreciate like, you know, close range, long range combat and stuff like that can have a differentiated experience. And I've found that Trickster and Devastator are a little samey in that they're both like close range, but they do enough different stuff to really make the experience feel great. Like the Trickster's ability to slow time, right, and slow bullets and stuff like that, compared to the Devastator, who just has an ability where he'll jump up in the air and they'll jump up in the air, and just smash everything. And then you can like use the Hulk. Seriously, like, yeah. And then you can use like the Golem special ability that like shields you up. So really, like, you know, there are those like RPG elements of tank, DPS, like long range stuff that I feel like differentiates these classes well.
Yeah, I played Trickster in a preview build of the game, and now I'm playing Pyro. I kind of wish I just stuck with Trickster, because I do like the way they can play with time, like you're saying, or they can kind of jump around and warp over places, which I think makes the game a little more interesting in my mind.
Yes, definitely. I haven't, no shade to Pyromans out there, but I have not loved my time with Pyro, which is why I stayed away. You know, I leveled my Pyro up to like 6 or 7 from the demo and then into the main game. And I just, the abilities weren't clicking for me like the Devastator and Trickster were. And, you know, Technomancer is really cool too, because like they are long range. They can, you know, main and snipers, right? But they can also, like, they have turrets, they have freezing abilities, and they have like a minigun ability that feels really diverse. And I'm like, I almost every time, because I play with my buddy who's a Technomancer and then my other friend who's a Trickster, and anytime my buddy's playing Tech uses the freeze ability, like, I'm just so thankful. I'm like, God bless you for being here, for many reasons, but especially those abilities. So it's like I found that those synergies work best together, where I haven't really found that with Pyromancer quite yet. So maybe I'm just not playing with the right people, but
yeah, maybe I should start over with a different class, because Outriders isn't totally clicking for me. I'm not loving the combat, feels fine, but I'm not totally in love with the shooter. And Liana really praised the story to some degree, which kind of surprises me, because the story feels a little rough to me around the edges.
Yes, I am not. I like a good sci-fi story, as you know about me, but the initial concept was interesting to me, but I'm finding myself checking my phone more often than not during cutscenes, because it's kind of like, for me, it's just like, okay, like, I get it, we're building this world, but I really just want to go back and shoot some stuff. So I'm with you on that, Ben.
But I love the enemy design. Some of the enemies in that game look great.
Really
Some
cool.
of the aliens look really cool.
Well, and that gets into, whilst we're on the subject of things we're not necessarily loving, I'm not going to beat this drum to death because it already has, but that's where the hate part of the love-hate relationship with this game comes in, is these servers, man. They're so... I'm hoping it means there's more people playing the game than they anticipated, right? Like if you look at the Xbox charts right now, it's on a lot of them, and I think has a lot to do with the Game Pass integration, right? But it is like from night to night, it is incredibly frustrating because you don't know what to expect, right? Like there was one night where myself and two of my friends, we got in, absolutely no problem, played for a while, and then something decided to stop working, and I kept getting like dashboarded, not even just like kicked to the main menu, like literally like to the start. I have found in my experience on Xbox, and I'm on Series X, it will work 90% of the time with two players, 90 to 95% of the time. But like the fun of this game is in when you have a full squad, right? So getting that third person in, whilst not maybe vital, is important. And like that's when I've had the most trouble, is when I've tried to play the game how it's meant to be played. So that's, the team over at People Can Fly are working their butts off. Like, I know they'll get it fixed, but it is frustrating in the meantime,
Yeah, it's also one of those things where this is a slightly different issue, but I can't pause cutscenes when I'm in the middle, like even when I'm playing by myself. It's so frustrating that I can't do that.
I guess
things happen where you're playing a game and you can't always like pay attention to a cutscene. So
that
annoys me.
To not to derail Greg's point from earlier about the press understanding game development, I'm sure there's a reason.
It's so easy. Just put a pause button.
Just do it. But it is like I talked a lot about like the multiplayer being the way to play this, right? But like single player is fun, but it's not single player. You have to be online, and I just don't feel like that jives to your point. So I'm sure there's a reason. But, I would have liked...
I'm sure there's a reason to.
Yeah.
And if they could do it, I'm sure they would have done it. But
yeah.
I mean, if it were easy, I'm sure they would have done it. Let's just say.
Yeah. Definitely.
Everything is hard in video. Like that actually was... sorry, just because you brought it up. Like it was one of my own discoveries when I got into game development, that there are things you would think must be easy can be really shockingly not that. Like... And my favorite example is just menus. It is things precisely like, pausing cutscenes or just putting a button on a screen. Like you would think that's the easiest thing in the world because you only play games where that stuff just works the way you would expect. But like I've worked on games where the hardest part of the project was literally just like what's called the shell, like the menu system. Whole game is totally fine, but like struggling to just put buttons on a screen, which is one of those things I never would have expected that.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah, and I don't think that is super uncommon. Yeah, I mean, only engineers, of which I am not one, can tell you, whether something is easy or not. And then a lot of the time, when engineers say something is easy, it isn't, because everything has to be tested, and people can have an amazing ability to like break games, as you've seen with like speedrunners, and speedrunners break games in benign ways, but they're, yeah,
definitely.
Now you have to pause every single cutscene in the game to make sure that the feature works, etc.
I wonder if you could like just open up a game and just look at the code as a gamer who knows nothing. Maybe you could just take more appreciation for how this magical thing works. Because like you're saying, we grow up playing games. You're like, hey, everything just works and it's magic. And it's like lifting up the hood of a car. If you know nothing about mechanics, you're like, I don't know what all this stuff is. Like, it's amazing. This thing runs. I can go 100 miles an hour on a highway. Like, this is incredible. Yeah. But yeah.
And those games had bugs too. There just wasn't an internet to like tell you all the broken stuff in them.
Oh yeah,
them fixed before. There was no patches.
No patching. Yeah, they had to.
There's so many games I played as a kid where I'm sure I was running into bugs, and I just thought I was bad at the game.
Yeah,
it's like, I'm bad at this game.
The last thing,
it's a little rough.
Yeah, the last thing I'll quickly say about Outriders is I think there's a great game here. I would say if you're not sold on it and want the best possible experience, wait for those servers to get fully updated so you can have an optimal experience. Because this is a game that once those issues get fixed, I think will be on my top 10 this year because I'm really enjoying the shooting that much. Wow. So if you're like me and you like shooters, I think this is a good experience. But that's the beauty of Game Pass. You can wait. Everything will be good. You'll get free stuff because they said that they're going to send some gear for the people who started that off. So give it a shot. That's what I'd say.
Yeah, well, and speaking of waiting, I wanted to give an update on Oddworld Soulstorm. I talked about it a little bit last week, and I was like, it seems kind of promising. I'd only played about an hour, and now that I played more, I want to retract that statement.
Oh no!
I think you should probably wait on this game if you have not already played it, or if you've not already bought it. And I wanted to get Marcus on here; he's reviewing it for us, and maybe we can have him next week to talk a little more in depth. I think his review will probably be up by the time you're listening to this, so go check out the review for more details, because I have not played through the whole game, but it is, speaking of bugs, like kind of a buggy mess. There's a lot of stuff, just talking to him, that he ran into that was like he would get to the end of a level and like an invisible wall was stopping him from progressing, stuff like that, where you're just like, it's kind of unfortunate that the game is hard to play for a lot of bug reasons, but then also it's just like pretty unpolished, even not bug speaking. Like the gameplay is fairly rigid. It feels like a PS1 game for good and bad. Like if you love those old PS1 Oddworld games, there's something here. It's just not refined enough. It's definitely pretty rigid. And some of the puzzle design is very spread out, where the checkpoints will be like minutes apart. And then you have to do all this like grunt work to set up to do the puzzle. And some of it's timing based. So if you screw it up, then you got to go all the way back. So it's kind of some frustration there. So I don't know.
Bummer.
It's still free on PlayStation Plus, so there's that if you're just really, really curious, but I would maybe put a pause on buying it if you're at all interested.
For sure. Maybe just download it and then wait.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you have PS Plus and you're really excited about it, go ahead and grab it. And maybe they can fix some of this stuff over the course of months, but
For sure.
as it stands right now, I don't think it's worth playing. I'm not sure. I'm going to keep going on it. It's pretty rough, but yeah, hopefully they can polish it up and turn it into something really cool.
For sure.
Cool. Greg, do you have anything you're playing that you want to contribute here?
Sure. Yeah, I got into my first ever Monster Hunter game in Monster Hunter Rise. It's one of those things that's been, Monster Hunter's, God, how long has it been around? It's been around forever. PS2?
It's been around, at least PS2,
yeah.
I want to say.
Yeah.
This is interesting that this is because World was the game that everybody was like unlocked Monster Hunter for a lot of people.
Yeah, like everyone with every Monster Hunter game, everybody always says this is the one. You're going to get into it now, and I'm someone who, like, the appeal of those games is they're huge in Japan, right? Especially, I mean, I think they're huge kind of everywhere, but especially in Japan. So it's easy to see what's cool about them. You have like a honkin' sword that's bigger than Cloud's Buster Sword or whatever, and you're like chopping down T-Rexes single-handedly. It's like, okay, I'm in. But then you start playing and it's pretty like there's a lot to grok, and it doesn't really play like anything else. There's some like superficial similarity to maybe like the Souls games, because you're tumbling around and you're swinging these big heavy weapons, but it doesn't, in practice, it doesn't play like those games at all, really. So yeah, I've always been like intrigued by those games and never really spent much time with them. And also because I guess they really shine in multiplayer for a lot of players, and I have not. I'm like more interested in them for single player. I suppose I don't necessarily have a posse to play with or anything like that. But Rise, as soon as I heard it was like in a ninja village or whatever, I'm like, all right, Ninja Village, I'm in.
That was the thing that did for you?
Yeah, you know what? Strangely, it was. Like I think that theme. I'm a sucker for like kind of mystical Japan type settings. I loved like Sekiro was my favorite game of that year a couple of years back, and I don't know. I wanted to see the Monster Hunter interpretation of that kind of setting, and having always been kind of intrigued by those games anyway. I dove in and I played all the way through I got to the credits in the single player anyway. I think there's still a lot to do after that, but I finally sunk a chunk of time into one of those games and wrapped my head around it. It's really, yeah, I mean it's a ton of fun once you kind of know what you're doing, but the learning curve, even on this one with folks saying it's easier to learn it's easier to learn because there are lots and lots of detailed text pop-ups, for the first 5 or 10 hours of the game. It's like it's a pretty intense way to learn. And I looked up external weapon guides and learned the combos and stuff like that. But it definitely clicked for me, and I really, really have been enjoying it.
Monster Hunter always kind of reminded me of coffee, where it's like, this is this thing that you're going to drink a couple of them, and you're not going to like it at first, but keep with it, and eventually it unlocks, and it's like your favorite thing.
Yeah.
That's how, when people talk about Monster Hunter, it always reminds me of that, and I'm still working on it. I tried really hard with World, and it didn't quite click, but maybe I'll give Rise a shot. I don't know. What was your main weapon set? What do you really like?
It's like a paralysis-inducing decision in that game, because I think there are literally 14 weapons, or weapon categories, and then there are like a billion types within each category, or I don't know, dozens. That's less than a billion. And the weapon types are like they're really cool. Whatever, heavy bowgun and something called the switch axe, like transforms between an axe and a sword. And this, like some of the newer stuff they added, I think in World is when they added something called the insect glaive. It's basically like a pole vaulting weapon that shoots insects into things. It's just wild stuff. And they have totally different play styles. So it was really hard to pick, but I defaulted to just the big ass sword, the great sword. It's kind of the first thing on the menu. But I also bounced to the switch axe and what's called the long sword, which is basically like a katana. And the game actually pushes you toward the long sword. In this case, I think just because of the theming, but it's the long sword is it's like a more complicated weapon. Oh, I also messed with the hammer. The hammer is just like a big, almost like a comical mallet that you just, sledgehammer T-Rexes over the head with. So I think the big chunky weapons like that are the ones that appeal to me. But they're so, again, coming from any other, if you played like Devil May Cry or even the Souls games, it's like everything is super, super slow and deliberate, and you don't have like auto aim or any of that kind of stuff. So you have to line up your hits and just tons of anticipation. You're just getting knocked on your face a lot in that game to start with. But then you learn moves to like quickly hop back up, and suddenly you're flying around like Spider-Man through. They added these new almost like web slinging types of mechanics to the game that make you like way more maneuverable than I think has been. I think that's all new in Rise.
Yep.
Well, now that you said Spider-Man, I think I'm interested in him.
Yeah, it is basically like that. You just belt out like although again, it's bug themed for whatever reason. You shoot out a little bug, it's got like a little silk thread, and it drags you, over. So you're kind of like,
spiders aren't bugs; they're insects.
That's
they're arachnids,
true.
right?
Arachnids versus insects. But yeah, they.
I even screwed it up. See how hard it is?
Boo.
Fake fan. Well, that's interesting. Thanks for talking about it, Greg. You think you'll keep with the series at this point? You think you're going to follow it along if the new one comes out?
I'm curious to. I've just always, been watching it kind of from afar. I'm curious what they do with it. It's one of those things. It's like whenever there's something, I see so many people like enjoying it. I just like I want to know what I'm missing. I feel like what's cool about this, and I definitely, and again, it like appealed to me on a basic level. I just had trouble getting into it like mechanically. So yeah, I like it. I like it a lot. I'll be curious to see kind of where they go next. And I like that they're sort of switching between different types of themes. And then the kind of monster designs themselves are just really intricate and cool. Just, they're super detailed and feel alive in a cool way. Like every encounter is a boss fight, basically.
And then you get to wear them.
Yes, and then you get to turn them into cool armor. That's right. which is like, yeah, it's pretty rewarding in that game. The basic loop of beat monster, turn monster into stuff so you can face, more powerful monster. It's pretty smart.
Awesome. Well, Greg, would you mind waiting in the next room just for a minute? I want to talk to these guys in private. All right. Welcome back, everybody. Now that we've got rid of Greg, I think it's time that you guys, oh my gosh, I hope he doesn't come back. I think it's time we sit down and chat, just the four of us, about the cover on the newest issue of Game Informer magazine, which is Resident Evil Village.
Yeah.
Woo! Yeah.
I'm obviously excited. I think I'm on the books as a big Resident Evil fan, but I don't know if people know Kim, Blake, you guys are fans as well. Alex, what's your familiarity with the series?
Unfortunately, there was not another video person, so I got to handle all the spooky stuff. But I will say I want to talk about that perspective once we go through your guys' as fans, because I think this game is doing some interesting stuff for people more like me.
Yeah, for sure. So the newest issue's out. It's out digital now. If you're a subscriber, you'll probably be getting it soon. Fingers crossed. We do a big blowout on the magazine. We got some exclusive interviews. We got a new demo, which shows off a little bit, a newer section of the village itself. We also got to see crafting and talk a little bit with the team about how crafting / hunting animals works, which is something they haven't really talked about yet before. So I think it's a pretty interesting dive into the series. You know, if you're a fan of the series, you should obviously check it out. If you're a fan specifically of Resident Evil 4, you should check it out because they cited Resident Evil 4 a number of times in our interviews. And Blake, I know you're a huge fan
of that
particular entry.
Yeah. It was, other than Warzone in 2020, I think my most played game was Resident Evil 4. I played through it like 3 times back to back within a month. Love that.
Was that for any specific reason? Was it because you were looking forward to Resident Evil Village, or just
to be
randomly?
Completely honest with you, a pretty bad bout of depression? Just like needed something.
Yep.
So I played through that a bunch and did like a good RPG run, which if you haven't done the RPG run, it'll knock your playtime to like a fourth because you just one-shot everything, including most bosses. It's so fun. It's the only way to play.
Hey, we all got to deal with it somehow, right?
Mm-hmm.
But speaking of Village, Kim, what was your impression? You know, you and I sat down, we talked to the team. Any big takeaways?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I liked that they were using comparisons to Resident Evil 4 because that's a great game, but also liked that, you know, there's a lot of every developer's doing this now, but it always amazes me with how their verticality is being used in a lot of games to kind of, you know, you can be on rooftops to attack, you can meet people up there who might be standing. So it felt like there's a lot to do with the combat of planning like your path out and what you want to do. Like you can still run in the game, obviously. You don't have to shoot everything. You know, if you want some of those upgrades, you'll probably have to hunt the animals. But I liked seeing them kind of, you know, try to evolve on what they did in Resident Evil 7 and, you know, have these creatures in more like interesting places. Like I love shooting the flower in the face and knocking them off like that. Like I love when there's objects around you in a room and you can just use that to your advantage to kill them.
Yeah.
So
that's something they talked about a lot, is like they wanted the environments to be a little bit more interactive, I think was the word they used, but it's definitely a bigger environment all around that you're going to be exploring. The section we saw reminded me a lot of, again, Resident Evil 4, the section in the village at the beginning of that game.
Yeah, so I just started replaying Resident Evil 4 because after we did the cover story, it got me like, you know, I really want to play 4 again. And yeah,
sorry to hear about that depression. Yeah.
That opening, that opening is so like, if you look to the Resident Evil 4 and then like the trailers that they've had for Village and just showing up in this weird place and something's not right with the people, definitely echoes like the similar feelings that we saw with Village, which I like. Yeah,
to the point where there's a section in the demo we saw for Village where Resident Evil Village, it's getting confusing here, but where there's a section where you're being hunted by these new lichen monsters, which look like werewolves. I said they were werewolves online at one point. People were like, they're not werewolves. I'm like, well, yeah, they basically look a lot like werewolves. They're inspired by werewolves, let's say. The lichen enemies chase you around this village, and they're overwhelming. Eventually, they get lichen. They get Ethan, the protagonist. They encircle him, and then this like bell goes off in the distance, and they all kind of run off. So it's very, very reminiscent of 4, which is kind of cool. We should clarify though that this is still a first-person game,
yes,
like Resident Evil 7 was. So it's holding on to a lot of those mechanics and also trying to hold on to the like very creepy atmosphere from 7.
That's something I've been curious about because 7 was interesting in that it seemed to pull from like slasher films and like almost exploitation movies, which was like an interesting place for games. And this one, from what I've seen, seems to be more interested in like, I don't know, occult horror, maybe? Is that the impression you all got? Like, where are they leaning with their specific brand of scares in this one?
More, I would say like more grim, like fairy tales more than occult, I would say.
Oh, there is like the storybook element to it, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's in the game. It's on some level, like those little storybook that you've seen in the trailers, like the 2D storybook stuff. That's going to be in the game. On some level, they wouldn't go too much into detail about that. And I feel like the developers were pretty cagey about their inspirations too. I think we asked them even point blank, like, hey, movies like Midsommar, Hereditary, kind of feels like maybe you're inspired by that. And they wouldn't say specifically, but I think that's still kind of it. But to Alex's point, yes, very, very medieval European lore fairy tale type stuff seems to be their inspiration.
Yeah.
I think that's like really cool. The fluidity of horror going forward in Resident Evil, because even the older ones, they're still just zombie George Romero type games. The way they are now, I don't know, maybe this will be the last time they ever do it, but like experimenting with how to incorporate other types of horror within a Resident Evil framework, I think it's like so exciting, especially that being like the only AAA horror game coming out these days.
For real?
Yeah, for sure. Maybe we should break down too we talked about hunting and we talked about crafting a little bit and just how that works. I don't know, Kim, do you want to go into detail on that?
Sure. Yeah, in this one, we saw in trailers that big guy at the shop, and you're gonna go to him throughout the game to get your upgrades for Ethan, and that includes like the weapons and crafting. What were some of the upgrades? Remember, Ben? They were like better ammo, more ammo. I think like
it was.
There's multiple types of upgrades, and Alex just did a video on this, so I'm sure he has it fresh in mind.
So it's locked and loaded right here. From what we've seen, there's two different sources, right? There's the shop where you spend the game's currency to buy like add-ons to your weapons, like a cheek. What's the word I'm looking for?
Cheek rest.
Like a
sniper rifle. Yes.
So like the swaying will be lessened, but then there's also like another subsection where you can upgrade specific parts of the guns that you already have, like damage, rate of fire, that kind of stuff. So it looks like it's a twofold approach.
That feels like another callback to Resident Evil 4 in some ways. Maybe not, maybe more like involved, but
yeah, I think it is a little more involved, and they've already shown that your inventory screen, is this traditional square grid that you can expand and you move your items around to, slot them in. So you definitely have a limited inventory space that you can upgrade over time. So yeah, that's the one thing. The weapon upgrades are one thing that you buy with money from the shopkeeper, and I think that you can probably find a few upgrades scattered around the environment, was my understanding. But then there's also Ethan can upgrade himself.
Yes.
So he can hunt animals. We saw some pigs, we saw chickens and fish that he was basically just going up and shooting point blank. So there's some wild animals that'll be harder to hunt, but like you'll basically farm these animals and take that meat back to the shopkeeper again, and then cook that stuff up. Yeah. And then that stuff can be turned into, you increase Ethan's health permanently.
Yeah.
Damage resistance when blocking and stuff. I thought it was interesting. Like some of the animals clap back. Like you can't just like scroll through. Oh yeah. Like there was a sheep or a ram, and like you got up in his business and he went, bah, he bucked you off. Like he was not having it. And the same with like the pig. The chicken tried, but man, he's just a little chicken.
Just a chicken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
chickens and fish. It's like,
what are you going to do?
It's like shooting fish in a barrel, turns out.
Yeah, and one thing I asked them, because there is like this focus on hunting to upgrade Ethan and all that, is like, is the game still like, will I be using my gun more than usual in this game because I want the upgrades? And they told us they still retained like the scary elements of you being put in a room and trying to decide if you need to just run. There's going to be points where you need to run. That's my favorite strategy, honestly, in Resident Evil, just like run out of there. And I like having that feeling that like ammo is precious. So I was a little worried that having to, do that for the upgrades, but they assured us it's still like they are going a little more action with this one, but not to the extent where they're taking away like what makes, those games like a tense experience. You're like, you see a group of enemies, and you're like, God, I can't take out this group, so I better just run. Or you, like I said, using the environment to your advantage will help as well. So I like that they're putting in some new stuff, but they're still making it scary and having you feel like, you don't have unlimited ammo, for instance, and you have to be careful with knowing what you want and not wasting your shots.
And with this upgrade system too, it seems like they're also rewarding you for taking those risks and chances in a more substantive way, which I really like. Like I said, as you guys know about me, I'm not a spooky guy. I don't love the horror genre and stuff like that.
Don't sell yourself short, man.
You're plenty spooky
to small kids, yeah.
Oh, I am. Kids and I scare them every time. I give them a big smile, but because I'm 80 feet tall, they get scared. It's a whole thing. It's formed a complex in me. Anyways, I do think because it is a bit more action focused, which I know is a little bit of taboo considering like, where the series went with 6. I think it's appealing to me more, and having more of a horror is weird for me because like if I can really separate myself with something like vampires and werewolves, I'm okay. Or like aliens. Like I love Aliens, like the Jimmy Cameron joint. But like it doesn't quite terrify me like some of the stuff in 7 did, where I was just like, no, like hard no and stuff like that. So I think the setting is interesting enough and the creatures are like far enough away from real that I can like get into it a little bit more, which I'm excited about. So if you're a big scaredy cat like me, like maybe you could like at least entertain the idea of playing this.
Yeah, Resident Evil, it's been around for so long. I was trying to think, it's probably the longest running horror franchise in games, right? There's like Alone in the Dark and stuff, but they're not making those games anymore.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of anything that competes really.
And they've done so many different things with the series. So there's so many different types of Resident Evil fans. There's people who love the originals. There's people who love the stuff that they've done with the remakes recently. There's people who love the more action oriented stuff like 4. And I think this game, they said there's going to be some puzzles in it. I have a feeling that the puzzles are not going to be as important. They said they didn't want to show them off because they didn't want to spoil the surprise, which is fair. But I have a feeling that this game specifically is probably going to appeal more to people who really loved 4 and really loved what they did with 7.
They confirmed the crank, though.
The crank is back.
Thank God.
I don't know what I would do, honestly. Yeah, the only other one thing that I thought was pretty interesting is we didn't really get to see more of Chris, but I did ask. I kind of pressed him a little bit. I was like, what's going on with Chris? It definitely seems like it's kind of messed up, right? That he shot Ethan's wife, right? Like that was in the first trailer.
Yeah.
And she's
like dead, right?
I'm trying to figure out if it's a fake out thing.
Yeah.
Because then there's another shot where she's like, it's a very dreamlike like sequence where she's holding the baby. Like it's very mysterious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they said one of their quotes was like, yeah, this game definitely taps into the darker side of Chris Redfield, let's say. So I thought that was interesting.
Man,
yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, for sure. I know one other thing I wanted to touch on, Blake, is in this issue. You also write something about Resident Evil. It's a big retrospective on the big series, the whole series. You want to say anything about that?
Yeah, it was an interesting one to write because Resident Evil's been around a long time. I don't know if anyone's aware just how many freaking Resident Evil games there are. It's honestly absurd.
7?
Yeah, just 7. It's a ton.
They've never done a spin-off. What are you talking about?
Actually, I found out on Capcom has an amazing press website that has like all these rad details about their series. There have been 141 different Resident Evil releases.
That's insane.
What?
But to be fair, that includes, games being ported and everything. But still, even considering that, that's a ton of releases.
So RE4 is what, 60 of those?
Yeah, it makes up half.
For
of
sure.
Yeah.
I had thought about going through, but it was like dozens of pages I'd have to go through and count how many were RE4. But yeah, so when I sat down to do it, I was like, instead of, giving half a paragraph to 36 different games, I decided to only write about 5 games.
The most
And highlight,
influential ones.
Yeah, highlight, if you strip everything back, what Resident Evil games are you left with? And that was 1, of course, 4, 7, and Remake 2. I don't know if those are controversial choices. I hope not. I don't care if they are or not.
Well, I mean, one thing, yeah, I'm sure somebody's going to have a problem with it. Like, you left out Revelation or something, but I think what's interesting about those choices, they feel like kind of the big pillars of, like we were talking about, there's so many different types of Resident Evil fans, and it feels like those kind of represent the big pillars of what people like about the series, right?
Yeah, I tried to look at it in a way where it's like, these were the ones that landed the hardest and had the biggest impact for the series in good and bad ways. Where Resident Evil 4 is undeniably one of my all-time favorite games. It had some pretty negative ramifications on where that series would go. You know what I'm saying? Resident Evil 1 as well, because they had to change it 4-4 because it got rote and trite to just do the same thing over and over again. And then, it's interesting to kind of chronicle the way Capcom will release a Resident Evil, change everything, sometimes just for the series, sometimes for the game industry at large, and then it's like they have to reverse course eventually on how they reinvented it. It's a very, very bizarre series to kind of chronicle, but yeah, I don't know where I'm going with this other than it was fun to write, and I think more people should take a look at Resident Evil 7. I played it for the first time for that piece all the way through, and that game is amazing.
I just replayed it recently too.
Yeah, I think once you get out of the house, it's not as good, but everything that happens in the Baker estate is fantastic. So yeah, I reckon.
And it's on Stadia now.
And it's on Stadia, finally.
Thank God.
If you live in Japan, it's on Switch.
Everybody's been asking, where can I get this game? Stadia, turns out.
There we go.
Weird Stadia plug there.
But
yeah, I don't know. Yeah, definitely check that out. Read the cover. Obviously, I wrote it. Blake wrote an interesting thing on the retrospective. I think it's an exciting time. We don't get a lot of big AAA horror games. I mean, in fact, you could probably argue that Capcom's the only one who's making them these days. Because we do get other cool horror games out there. There's plenty of indie teams out there cranking away on some really dark, horrifying stuff, but not a lot of big publishers are doing that these days, which is kind of sad. So it's exciting that we're finally getting a new Resident Evil, and it's, just a few weeks away at this point.
That's wild.
Yeah, it's crazy to think we're going to be playing it so soon. I'm so stoked, though.
Yeah.
What are some of the other, obviously there aren't many, but do any jump to mind big budget AAA horror games? The only one other than Resident Evil that popped into my brain was, I guess, Alien Isolation, but even that was 7 years ago.
Even that's it's been a long time.
I think Evil Within 2 is one of the last big AAA titles, and that was what, 2017? Something like that.
At least 3 years ago, right?
Yeah.
You could probably bend it in some ways to be Last of Us Part 2 does lean a lot on some of those things. And,
but yeah, fair.
It's I wouldn't classify it as horror. I feel like it's action mixed with horror elements, right? Outlast 2, but even that's more indie. Yeah.
You could say, we could nitpick it all day. I mean, The Medium just came out, which I don't know if you'd classify that it had Microsoft backing a little bit, but felt indie in my mind.
Indie, but not that scary.
Or good, it turns out. Yeah, so hopefully Resident Evil will be good and enjoyable. Yeah, any final thoughts on Resident Evil? Comes out May 7th, so we'll obviously have our review thoughts here in the coming weeks. But
I've heard you in the audience like a little exclusive gameplay. So you just better keep it tuned to GI because we got some more videos coming your way.
Yeah, that's a good point. You're doing you posted recently the video on the crafting, as we mentioned. Mm-hmm. Any other things you want to highlight, or Kim, you're doing a couple written things?
Yeah, I'm going to explore more about Chris Redfield and what's going on there. We got some great quotes that Ben put in his cover story feature. But even for me, it's like, I used to feel like Chris, like everybody loved Leon and Chris kind of got the short end of the stick. So I always loved Chris. And then like in these games with this like redesign or whatever is going on, it just doesn't feel like the same Chris to me. So I'm like really curious what they do with that character, because they are really pumping him up as a villain, and like even going into that village, you know, you're going to bump into a bunch of different people, and there's some messed up stuff going on. I can already tell that, like, I'm excited to like dive into those mysteries and find like the little letters and be surprised. And I'm just surprised that so his daughter, we confirmed, is 3 years old, I believe, at this point in the story when we were asking Capcom. And God, after what happened at the end of, which I'm not going to spoil anything, but like the end of RE7, I'm like, well, this is how they're bringing him back. I got to see how it all, like, as we find out more about what even Ethan's been up to in the intervening year or whatever. How many years is this set? I can't remember.
3.5, right?
Yeah, because the daughter's yeah, that's right. So he had the daughter. Daughter gets hijacked, of course, into the village.
Daughter gets
hijacked. Yes, they hijacked the daughter.
They're breaking new ground with.
They're breaking new ground, but and every time you have a child's fate in my hands, my God, does everything become so much more intense when you're in those games? So,
yeah, you reminded me. Speaking of Chris, one thing they said that blew my mind is this one on the internet. You know, all those pictures of like Chris from Resident Evil, the first Resident Evil, Chris from like the DLC for 7 and then the new game, and just like this person looks completely different.
Yes.
Like, each time he comes out, he looks really different. And they said something that blew my mind is like the art guy was like, yeah, that model from the DLC in 7 and the model in 6, that's the same model. Like we just sort of like positioned it maybe a little bit differently and clothed him differently. But I'm like, what? That, because it looks completely different. So according to them, that's the same model.
Weird.
I think we all also are looking forward to those boss battles that Resident Evil is so known for. I know I'm excited to see what they come up with. That was my favorite part of playing the games, is just being locked in with like some vicious creature or person, and you just trying to survive and getting low on your ammo and being like, oh no, am I gonna make it through this? So they seem to get more creative with how they put bosses in front of us. So I'm really curious as you go through Village, that and like what other places maybe are in the Village. Like they've kept a lot under wraps, which I'm kind of like, I like going into a game not knowing obviously everything, especially for this, but there's a lot of things I'm looking forward to about this.
Well, and it's just like, also too, it's like a true next gen experience,
Yes.
right? Which we really haven't had a ton of, you know, since launch. I guess Outriders to a certain extent, but like, you know, it's exciting to have like something that justifies the next gen systems. So
Sure, yeah. Well, should we wait? Hold on. Did you guys hear that? There's like some rapping on my door.
Oh,
And moaning? Like seems like somebody's trying to get in. Hold on.
Did you?
Oh, it's Greg Kasavin. Oh, yeah. Should
I
we?
thought you told him to leave.
Sorry. True horror. Should we do some emails with him? Welcome back to the show, everyone. We're here to answer a few emails. These are emails that people write in to podcast@GameInformer.com. Please send us anything. We love to hear from you, and we want to answer your questions. We also appreciate games. We got a few of those this week, so we'll see if we can get to them. This first email comes in from Mike M. from Castleberry, Florida. Excuse me. He says, I was playing AC Odyssey the other day and struggling to find the list of stats that I'm used to checking in these games and in most open world games. So that got me to thinking about things that all games should have and also things that I think should have. Here's my list, but I would love to hear your thoughts too. So he has 2 lists for us. Games that he think all games should have. And that list includes stats, as he mentioned, you know, and this is just like basic info, like how long you've been playing, percentage, completion, that kind of thing. Number 2 is fast travel, which is a must for open world games. Probably wouldn't really apply for other games, though, to be fair. Number 3, a story so far. So kind of a quick recap, maybe even a cutscene that kind of details like the game you played up until this point.
That's good.
And then the ability to save anywhere. He says, it's 2021. Come on, people.
There's still RPGs that don't have save points that don't let you save everywhere, and it always drives me crazy because I'm like, in this day and age,
Bravely Default 2. Like, come on now.
Yeah.
Well, and a long time ago too, like people used to argue like that was part of the difficulty, and I'm like, wait, you're telling me it's not having a save point, it like that is easy for someone to stop playing is difficulty? Because that's bad if that's where you think, you know, it's a part of difficulty, because it's not. And I'm actually playing, as I was playing something recently, they didn't have the save points, and like I had to go somewhere, so like it's just, you know, then you just got to put your console in you know, sleep mode, and I don't like doing that either. So
I'm with you 110%. I want picture The Godfather, right? With all the families coming together. I want the heads of Xbox, PlayStation, the whole thing. I want them all together. And once and for all, decide where to turn on and off subtitles. It's in HUD. It's in gameplay. It's in audio. I love that they're there. Please keep putting them there. Please put size abilities there, right? Just pick one place that they need to be. I vote audio, but that's just me.
Do you think
Alex
Keeley brought that up when he had them all come out on stage?
I think so. Yeah.
While y'all are here.
Yeah.
Can we figure out the subtitle thing? It's a little wild, guys.
Alex, I swear I was going to bring this up. And it does sound a little bit familiar to like Greg's point of like, hey, it's hard to even make a button appear on screen. But what I would love ideally is like, not just that, but like when I pause a cutscene, give me the option to turn on or off subtitles right there. I always appreciate when some games do that, because like sometimes I don't always want subtitles on.
Yeah.
But it's nice when like something loud is happening or a train's going by or whatever, when I can just turn on subtitles like in the moment rather than having to go into a menu.
I didn't even think of that. That's good. Greg's like sweating over here. Like, please
so many features.
No, it's a good. I think that makes sense. There's a we were like subtitles off by default for years, and it was on Hades where we flipped it, because for us it's like, oh, you know, it's the experience is so different, and you know, it's more immersive without subtitles, all this kind of stuff. But I think the way people play stuff has just evolved over time. We found like we started with them off, and like almost everybody, like 90+% of people were turning them on. We're like, okay, this should be on by default. This is straightforward. Yeah, it's one of those things. For my own part, yeah, it's like I used to
that many people. Yeah, I'm surprised that many people play with subtitles.
It just helps.
It does.
It definitely helps you process the information. It's something like you're reading along with it. It makes you hear the words more clearly in a weird way. But yeah, especially if there's like characters talking in the middle of a fight or something like that, it's just easy to miss what they're saying. Which sounds paradoxical, because it's not like you should have time to read stuff on the screen when you're like fighting guys. But yeah, subtitles.
Definitely. And to be clear, I don't think there's any wrong answer on where it is. I just want us all to agree on where they need to go. You know,
I got one. Actually, now I'm thinking about it, I want the ability. All games should have the ability for you to toggle difficulty. Like, I hate being locked into one difficulty and then realizing like this was too easy, or this, you make this decision at the beginning of the game before you even step into it, and you just don't know. Like, you know, sometimes I'll play games on normal. I'm like, I should have bumped this to hard, or I should have bumped it down. And I know it's probably difficult. And that's the reason why more games don't do it. But I really, really do wish you weren't locked into that one difficulty. If you decide like 3 hours later, like this is too easy, and now I'm just like, I'm not going to go replay those 3 hours. But you know, that's what I always want, is to be able to toggle difficulties. Some games let you do it, some don't.
Yeah, kind of along the same lines, being able to respec or reclass. I think Outriders, not to dump on that game some more, but you can't reclass like after you picked a class, which makes sense because a lot of games do that. So it's like, it's logical, but it'd be so nice to be able to be like, oh, I already played this character, and I'm halfway through. I don't like the Pyromaster. I want to switch rather than having to start a new game.
You can respec though. I just want to make sure that that's clear. You can't change
in
your
Outriders.
class,
You can
but-
respec. You cannot change your class.
Yep.
Yeah, to be clear, that's fair.
I got two. Let me ask you ever heard of a little game called Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance?
I have. Hey, by the
Really?
way, I don't know if you're bringing that up, but like that was one of those games where when you pause it in the middle of a cutscene, you can turn on and off the captions.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You know what else that game does that is so good is if you set your health packs, they automatically apply for you. You don't have to like manually press a button to get a health pack. And that's so good. It's such a nice little quality of life thing, especially in a game like that where you're getting the holy hell beat out of you constantly and it's just constantly replenishing, which that was in every game. Which leads me to my second point. Put the freaking blade mode from that game in every single game. I don't care. FIFA, Cooking Mama,
Mario,
Doom Eternal, Mario. I do not care what it is. Point and click adventures, text adventures. Put the blade mode into every game and let me cut dudes to ribbons. So satisfying. And honestly, I think it'd be easy to do. I don't see any challenge there. I think it would be extremely easy. You just copy from Revengeance paste into the other game.
The FIFA licensing rights might be a little tricky, but other than that,
That's the hardest part.
I love that game. Is so like memorable. I love that. Yeah, I love that game.
Yeah, it's such a weird experience.
So
do you guys want to hear his list of must not haves? I'm curious to see what you guys think. So games should not have swimming. Apparently he hates swimming. Games have never done swimming right. Swimming in games sucks. It's disorienting. It's frustrating, and it never looks natural.
swimming in Fortnite's pretty good.
Is it?
Yeah,
I don't
feels
think I
good.
hate swimming.
I feel like games have been doing. I feel like this is like an old, like games have had to overcome the swimming is terrible sort of. I feel like it's been better in recent years.
Oh yeah, we got this email in 2001. So
back then, 100%. Yeah.
Abzu did it well.
I don't know. There was what was that game? Abzu, where the whole thing was.
Yeah.
That was a good game.
Yeah. This argument's not holding water.
Yeah, I don't know, Mike. Come on. All right, number 2, levels. Oh, sorry. Levels that introduce mechanics halfway through the game, just for 1 or 2 levels. That's annoying. Apparently, Final Fantasy VII Remake did that. I don't remember what he's referencing.
I love that. I think that's so cool.
I don't think I hate that as much either. If it's done well, if the mechanics are fun.
Depends, right? Yeah, whether it's like kind of gimmicky or a cool, like
what's that level like in Titanfall 2? Everyone loves, and that time travel mechanic. Yeah, and Dishonored 2. Honestly, they're very similar.
So
like maybe it would be cool to have that the whole game, but it also makes it super special that it's like, oh, I was not expecting this.
They'd have to design the whole entire game around it, right? It's like, part of what makes it unique and memorable is that it's like this one particular part. Yeah.
Hey, Alex, are you muted?
I am not. I just was trying to not scream over our guests here.
I just heard you. I saw your mouth moving, and I didn't hear you. So.
That level in Titanfall is one of the best in first-person shooter history.
Yeah.
So, I'm trying to think of what moment in Final Fantasy they're talking about.
That's what I'm trying to think of too.
Like, because you get Barrett and Chief, maybe adding Aerith,
or like splitting up the party or something. I don't know.
Maybe. Yeah.
Driving a motorcycle.
Maybe it's that. Maybe it's the motorcycle.
Oh, it could be the motorcycle thing.
But
that was so easy to do.
Yeah. Like, I don't want to be always doing this thing. I like when there's like new things introduced.
Yeah.
Even if it's just for a level or 2.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's see. Number 3 on his list, I actually think I agree with. Number 3 is unskippable cutscenes.
Yeah.
I would also add unpausable cutscenes to my list personally. Yeah. Generally, I watch all the cutscenes and so I can understand the story, but come on. You should be able to skip them if you want to.
Yeah.
That fits.
So interesting list. Yeah. Anything you guys would add? Like, hey, all games should or no game should have this, let's say?
Deals with the United States military.
Where the game company itself made a deal with the military?
Publisher,
Okay.
developer, whatever. Gun companies. Either one.
As much as I agree on the water point, I do not like ice levels. Just throwing it out there. Don't know. I'm waiting for the developer to come along and do the best one. How about that?
Do those really still happen though? Like, what's the last ice level where you were like slipping and sliding around?
I think 3D World had it for Super Mario.
Yeah. I swear I just played one. Maybe the Wonderful 101. I can't remember.
Yeah, granted, I haven't played platformers in a while, so I may be missing out on wonderful ice levels.
My nephew grew up in Texas and like has rarely seen snow his entire life. And one time we're out visiting my dad in New Mexico, and it was snowy at the time and super slippery. And he slipped on some ice. And he's like, "What?" Like, he was surprised. He was like, "I just thought that was the thing they made up in video games, that ice was slippery." Like, because he's never really experienced that. I thought that was so funny.
That's amazing.
That's
Is it ice levels or snow levels too?
Snow is dope, especially when the sound design is good. You know what I mean? Like in Spider-Man, where it's like you'd be stepping on like concrete and then you'd swing up to a building and you hear that crunch. That's cool. It's when you do the incredibly goofy movie, like slipping and sliding and going everywhere, and it's like, I get it's supposed to be hard. You're doing it, but like, I hate it. So that's just me.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
Cool. All right. Moving on to the next email from, let's see, Brady from Edmond, Oklahoma. Writes in and says, quick follow-up on last week. Last week he wrote in an email about representation in video. He basically asked us what we thought about representation. He wanted to clarify. He says, apparently the wording I used at the end of my email was wrong about gender of protagonists in games. He says, while my question, I tried to essentially say that the video game industry has never lacked male representation, but apparently the way I worded it made it sound like there wasn't enough representation of male protagonists. So he wanted to apologize for the confusion and thank us basically for answering it in the spirit of the question. I think for me, the way you had worded it, Brady, was made it sound like you thought there was plenty of female protagonists already, and you. So that's the way I misread it. Misread the way you worded it. But thanks for the clarification. He also says, if you guys don't mind sneaking an actual question in there, what are your guys' thoughts on the rumored cancellation of Days Gone 2? Personally, I loved Days Gone, and I'll be crushed if we don't get a second one.
Prepare to be crushed? I mean, it sounds like that's pretty much... It sounds like from the Bloomberg report, right? It sounds like that studio's on to different things now, which is, I haven't played Days Gone. I know people really liked it. Jeff Cork was a big old fan of that game. I don't, Sony hasn't said what they're doing with their catalog of games, right? But it sounds like they're taking the Nintendo approach, where it's like they're just focusing on those main tentpoles, which I think can be good. What scares me is I don't need a remake of Last of Us after we got remastered 3 years ago, 5 years ago, whatever. You know what I mean? I would love to see, if they're going to stick to these IP, keep pushing forward and innovating in those spaces, right?
I don't like Days Gone. I do hope that studio at least gets the chance to work on something else they're passionate about. Personally, not too bummed about not playing another one. I think the news from that report that is a little upsetting to me is the idea that maybe more experimental games won't. I don't know if that's the right word. Like, focusing on tentpole titles and kind of letting smaller things fall by the wayside to some degree is very upsetting to me. There were reports from VGC a month or two ago about people leaving Japan studio and some of the changes there. That was a huge bummer. I don't inherently have anything wrong with the bigger games Sony's doing. I think Last of Us Part 2 is fine. I'm not super interested in a lot of the other ones, but it's like, and I'm for lack of a better example here. But if like there was never another Astros game,
Yeah.
that would be heartbreaking.
Or
to
like
me, you know?
or like Dreams, like not showing out for another Dreams.
For
Like,
sure.
That's a bummer.
That's a great example. Yeah. That's really like kind of a bummer to me, more so than not playing this AAA game versus that AAA game. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, I don't know. I hope Sony Ben gets to find another project that they're very passionate about.
Definitely.
In summation, but
Yeah. I think that's fair. I'm assuming nobody here was a crazy Days Gone fan. Feels like that game was, I don't want to say polarizing. It just feels like you loved it or you were kind of like mad on it. But
yeah.
I did not invest the time I needed into that game, unfortunately. But I'll say I agree with Blake, and I think there's some talented developers over there at Sony Bend, and I hope they get to make something they're passionate about, for sure. Maybe another Siphon Filter. Bring that one back.
Now's the time.
Okay. Here's another email. Tom from Redmond, Washington writes in. He says, previously on Fantasy Greenlight, I don't know if you remember these emails. Tom's written in a couple times about, at one point, the heads of Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft had fused together, and we were in charge of all their marketing decisions and what games they made. So he has another fantasy like game, Greenlight game to play. So fueled by Bethesda's acquisition, Hive Mind, Phil Spencer devoured the inner Sony and Nintendo. And now Sony has been accused of turning their studios into Naughty Dog support studios. So Hive Mind, Phil Spencer is eyeing Sony's IP to gobble it up. I'll be honest, Tom, I'm kind of losing the thread here, but the point is he's saying we're in charge of making decisions for Microsoft, and Microsoft has to make sequels to previous Sony IPs. Does that make sense?
No,
so we're
but
going
yes.
to pick the Microsoft studio, and so we're going to pick the Sony franchise and then pick a Microsoft studio that will make that next game.
Okay. With you.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Well, so he lists off, speaking of Days Gone, he says Days Gone. Do you guys have any ideas on which Microsoft studio should make a Days Gone game?
Who does State of Decay again?
Yeah.
In Exile? No.
Yeah. No.
I don't think
They're Undead Labs, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
There you go.
That sounds like the correct answer.
That sounds like, the obvious slam dunk there.
I did it.
Hey, Tony's not doing it.
Well done.
Well done. Okay, what about Uncharted?
I'm just waiting to say Ninja Theory for something.
I was about to say Ninja Theory. Like, get all that movement in there, swinging around. It feels so great. I'd be so into it.
Well, so later on in the list, we have God of War, and I think Ninja Theory is really smart for a God of War title, but they can also work on Uncharted. I was also thinking Machine Games. They're working on that Indiana Jones game, so it kind of makes sense.
Oh, yeah. That's a good one.
Wolfenstein.
Yeah.
Okay, what about Drive Club?
Who makes Forza?
Theme, right? The turn 10.
10?
Turn 10, yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Of course, a lot of these things, like, do you want? I don't know if you feel like Forza is a bigger deal than Drive Club now.
Yeah.
But
so it feels like a step down in some sense. What if we just did a weird oddball and give it to Double Fine or something? Hey, do something weird with this.
Yeah. Forgot about Drive Club.
Yeah, I didn't play that.
Yeah.
Infamous. I love the Infamous series.
Oh yeah, those are cool.
Mm-hmm.
Arcane?
Ooh,
I
like that one.
That could be fun. Yeah. Yeah. Let's go with Arcane.
I like that idea.
Yeah, that is a good idea.
Is Arcane part of? Wait,
they're part of Bethesda, so now they're part of Microsoft.
Yeah.
So all the Bethesda studios could be in there.
Yeah. Interesting.
So so id could maybe work on one of these. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Should we just have id do Drive Club?
Yeah.
So the last one on Tom's list here is MLB The Show.
id Software. I want to play that game.
First person.
That'll get me into baseball games.
Oh, finally. I was also trying to think like really outside the box, and I was like, maybe Rare do something weird.
Yeah.
I
Sea
think
of Thieves art style with MLB.
it could be fun. I think if you want more of a like great sim, like Turn 10 is another one. I know we just already said them, but like to nail like the presentation of that could be cool. Sorry, I do like baseball. I apologize. Wanted a good baseball game.
Oh, yeah.
And you should apologize for that too.
I will. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I don't know. Anything else? Any other major Sony properties you guys can think of that you'd love to see Microsoft tackle?
You brought up Rare, Ratchet and Clank, like a Rare
Ooh.
Ratchet and Clank game or something like that.
That would be
That'd
great.
be fun.
Insomniac Spider-Man.
So who would do that one?
Yeah, they would just do that again.
Develop Insomniac Spider-Man.
Yeah, hit me with a little Killzone from 343. I think that'd be fun.
Oh wow.
Okay.
Yeah, I think with those mechanics that they've been able to inherit from Bungie and bring into the modern era, that could be an interesting take on Killzone.
So have the Halo studio make the Halo killer.
Yeah, full circle, baby.
Order 1886 from Machine Games.
Oh,
Yeah.
That actually feels like a good fit.
Yeah.
Order never got a fair shake. I think
Cool
that
setting.
game did some cool stuff with alternate history, but Machine Games got the capital on that right now, so it'd be cool to see what they did with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we already mentioned Ninja Theory, but maybe Ninja Theory on like a Ghost of Tsushima or something could be kind of cool.
Yeah.
Interesting. Or whatever. What's the quadruple A studio that's doing Perfect Dark?
What is their name?
This is gonna bug me.
But I mean, they're pretty untested, right? That's a new studio.
Yeah. I'm just a sucker for the quadruple A moniker, and I want to know what the hell that means.
Just the arms race of A.
Yeah.
Soon it will be quintuple A.
Yeah, you'll find out soon.
The year is 2050.
Exactly.
Games have 10 A's.
Cool. Well, I feel like that's good. If you figure that out, let us know, Alex.
Yes.
I forgot that Microsoft owns Compulsion Games. Remember the We Happy Few
Oh, yeah.
developer?
Oh yeah.
Are they still working on something? I guess
We
we'll
Happy
find out.
Few. I'm pretty sure.
Is that game not out?
No, it's out.
No. I think they're like updating it and like
Oh,
adding
okay.
new
I
stuff
see
to
what
it.
you're
I could be wrong.
It's the
don't know.
initiative, by the way. The
The
initiative, is
Initiative.
the studio. Yeah. Carry on.
The Coalition, the Initiative.
I was just thinking of the Coalition. Like I was like, wait, that's the studio that does Gears, but no, it's
Yeah.
Coalition. All right. Okay, let's see. Tack Corgi writes in and says, "Hey, let's play a game called Never Have I Ever." You guys remember familiar with this one?
Yeah.
So, do you do it where you have your fingers up? He
Mhm.
was saying we'll add points up when you've never done one, but we could do the
Okay.
finger thing if you want. He says below are 15 sample questions. The panel can make up their own if they want, but here's a bunch of stuff. So if you have never done this thing, you'll give yourself a point, is the way he wants us to do it. And then we're going to add up and see who has the most points at the end. So he says, never have I ever played games for 24 hours straight on my own accord.
Never have I played for 24 hours.
Like straight.
On your own accord. So I've done it for like Extra Life or for Guinness World Record stuff.
Mhm.
Does that count? I mean, it was technically I chose to do those things.
I think Guinness would. I'm not sure Extra Life would.
There's something dark of your own accord. Like it makes
Yeah,
these.
Yeah.
What are these scenarios where you must play? It's like
Who
like
locked
a
you in a
Saw
room
movie.
and forced you to play?
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess never have I ever. So you're getting a point if you have done it. Is that what we just decided?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Oh, if
So
you
if
have,
you've never done it, if you can say never have I ever done that, you're fine.
Yeah.
Okay. So never have I ever forgotten to do something important because of a video game. I've definitely forgotten to do
if
things.
you have done it, you get a point.
Yes.
Okay. Go to school, basically.
Really?
Forgot.
Ken, what'd you forget?
oh, I've forgotten tons of stuff I've had to do because I've gotten involved in a video game way too much.
I've forgotten to feed myself several times.
Yeah, I've forgotten to eat. I've forgotten to like do things that like need to be done around the house. Time flies when you're having fun.
Fact.
All right, never have I taken time off work to play a video game. I have done
It's
that.
hard in your profession.
Yeah.
It's a gray area, right?
Yeah.
Well,
I've done that many times.
Reiner-
Reiner, this is coming out. I'm taking this day off.
yeah, I'm at 3 already.
When I got my PlayStation 5, Reiner told me to take the day off. So
That's so good.
That's
Does that count? Because it was
no,
compulsory time off?
I've also taken time off, especially when I was a freelancer. It didn't matter, just work.
All right, never have I ever tried a leisure suit Larry game.
No, I tried one of those.
I've never played one of those.
I used
honestly.
to play those. Because it asked you all these questions you had to get past, and I felt so smart when I would just guess the answers. And
You
get
ever
in.
played those games, Greg?
Yeah, at least a couple of them back in the day, in the adventure game heyday. I don't remember 4 or something like that. Yeah.
All right. The next one is never have I logged more than 1,000 hours into a game.
Damn it.
Really? What game was it?
Overwatch. My Overwatch
Mm.
thing is like at 2,000 hours right now. I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about it. And NHL as well. So NHL is like at 1,000 hours.
Halo 3 combined with the
Oh.
Master Chief Collection. Yep.
Gosh.
Hearthstone, I'm glad I don't, or I suppose I could find out, but I have, yeah, Dota 2 and Hearthstone for me in recent decades. And then I don't know how much time I spent on like Street Fighter equivalent games in the 90s.
Oh, that's hard because you can't like track that very easily.
Yeah, I can't,
Oh,
I'm,
yeah.
I'm sure it was thousands of hours.
Greg,
Like, combined.
you're at 2, huh? I'm at 3.
We're
do you
counting-
have any? Sorry, I'm sorry.
I don't have any over 1,000 hours, I don't think.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's the most you put into a game, you think,
Me?
Blake?
Me?
Oh, sorry, Blake.
I think I've literally maybe only played 2 or 3 games over 100 hours. Like Warzone, at this point, is probably the game I've played the most of. Persona 5 Royal, just because you have to play it for 100 hours. And then probably Grand Theft Auto 5, because for like years, that was my friends drink together and play a game. And I'm sure over the course of the years, I hit 100. But
Wow.
Warzone's
Okay,
probably it, but it's not even at 200 yet.
Yeah, I'm kind of similar. I think I played a couple for 300 hours even, but I don't think
Yeah.
I've gone over 3. Okay, never have I ever cursed out a child in an online game as an adult. I'm happy to say I've never done that.
I've not done that.
Yeah.
And never have I spent more than $100 in-game currency. I've never done that.
Mm.
I've never-
Never have I trolled someone online into losing a significant amount of progress. These are mean.
What?
Yeah, that's what it says.
Why
I've
do you
never
even
done
do
that.
that?
I
Yeah.
was gonna say, what game? Like progress?
You could do that in like they're like fringe MMO scenarios where maybe you like
Mm.
bait someone to getting killed and they lose all their stuff or
Mhm.
something like that. But it's kind of, I think these days games are kind of designed.
To make it harder. I remember there was that news story about that kid who the first Destiny came out and like some people, he did the share play function and then they deleted a bunch of his weapons.
Oh, God.
Which was brutal.
That's awful.
Yeah.
That's so.
Demon
That's
Souls
messed
is a one that you can do that. I've had it happen to me, and I
you're right.
almost threw the controller. Wasn't good.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's rough.
Yeah, you can
Oh,
invade someone's game when they're kind of getting pretty far along. And
Yep.
yeah,
It does,
Mm.
man, does it make you feel good when you fight back the trolls? Because I feel like so much
Yeah.
of our lives is like ignoring trolls, but in that game, you could get them. Oh, it felt good.
Okay. Now, next one is never have I ever wasted time playing Google Stadia. That feels very judgmental. I mean, I've played Stadia games, but I consider that time well spent here.
Yeah.
Wait, is it a finger up if I've never played a Stadia?
Yeah, if you've never done it, you don't give yourself a point, right?
Right.
Right.
But if you
Okay.
have, then you would give yourself a point.
Okay.
And then let's see, never have I ever finished Persona 5.
I finished that.
All right, I'm at 5, a whole hand now.
And never ever have I gotten banned from an online video game.
I have because of accidentally quitting or purposely quitting.
Sure, Alex. Accidentally.
Okay, there's some rage quits in there, but nothing for actually like bad behavior or anything like that. I promise.
I'm at 3 points. What are you guys at?
3.
I'm at 3, I think.
4.
5.
I think we have a winner.
Nice. Congratulations.
I think.
Wow.
This is because I put 1,000 hours into games.
I got that one.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because Attack Corgi said that the person with the least amount of points would be the ultimate gamer, but that doesn't make sense.
I think we may have scored it in reverse or something like that.
Yeah. Maybe we did.
He meant to do golf rules and we just ignored that, I suppose. I don't know.
Hey, congrats, Kim.
Ultimate gamer.
Ultimate gamer. Cheers.
Right here.
Some of those were mean, though. I'm glad we didn't get more points.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. That brings us to the next segment of the show. We're returning for the last time. March Mayhem. You guys remember this? We started in March. We started doing the tiered system. You guys wrote in. You told us which characters you wanted to have face off against each other. And now we're here to finally settle the score. We have our final 6. Is that how brackets are supposed to work?
Sure. For this, it is.
We'll see how it works. So it'll be a...
Four. If it's March Madness, it's supposed to be Final 4.
Yeah.
No, it's March Mayhem. They do it differently. Yeah.
Sorry, I went to basketball.
I did too. That's why I kept moving on.
You guys ready though? Let's see who wins in these battles. So the first matchup of the night. You guys are excited for this. You know him, you love him. Master Chief walks into the arena. And then who follows up behind him? Or from the other corner? I don't know. Yeah, there he is. Geralt of Rivia.
Boo. Oh, sorry.
It's an interesting fight, but Master Chief does have guns.
Yeah.
And grenades, which are more powerful than guns.
Yeah, I love Geralt, but he's got a sword.
Master Chief lets his guns do the talking, and if you played a Witcher game, you know there's like 45 minutes of dialogue you got to sit through before Geralt will pull out his sword, so he's out of there. You know what I'm saying? Done deal. He'd be trying to pick which dialogue option he wants to say to Master Chief, and he'd just shoot him. It'd be over. No contest.
Does anybody think Geralt's winning this? I mean,
because even
no judgment. Everybody can speak freely.
I don't think he can win against that, even though he's really good with his sword and he can dodge very well. He might have him on that because he's a little more agile, right? Because Master Chief's got, the armor that must be heavy.
But I feel like Master Chief's armor would be impenetrable for
that's the thing. Like his sword wouldn't be able to do much. He's got to have a weak point somewhere. Isn't that the rule of video games? There's a weak point on everyone somewhere. There's got to be. Geralt just has to find it.
Not Master
It's
Chief.
his soft heart.
It is his softness for Cortana.
He's a weakness for Cortana. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, Master Chief, I think, walks out of this one. The next matchup, Ganon versus Magus from Chrono Trigger.
Ooh, this is a good one.
Ganon?
We've been doing sort of like Ganon as a concept, if that makes sense. Just sort of like assuming that all Ganons are one Ganon, which is hard to think of. But which do you think is the most powerful Ganon?
Oh, I don't know. I think there's a coolest Ganon from Wind
which
Waker.
one's that?
Oh,
Wind
Waker version. Oh, I love the
really
Wind Waker
looking,
version of him. Yeah.
Does he transform in that one?
I don't think he does. He's just like a awesome swordsman dude.
Yeah, no pig
So
form.
it's actually a pretty tough. I don't know that he would beat. Yeah, but then there's like Calamity Ganon or whatever. That's like pretty different. But
yeah,
I don't remember Magus was super cool, but I don't remember all of his powers. He just had his awesome scythe.
Yeah, he had a cool weapon, and he
like
had some kind of magic powers, didn't he?
Yeah.
But also Ganon can do that. He can throw
bullets
and stuff at you, and he can turn into a giant pig monster.
I mean, Ganon is a final boss, and Magus is not. So,
ooh, that's a good point.
Is that the argument? Does anybody think Magus should take this?
I
like that Magus is on the list.
I only know of him from what we talked about with Joe 2 weeks ago. And I just don't get the vibe he has the ability to overcome Ganon's final form, right? whatever shape that takes.
It feels like a pretty good matchup until Ganon transforms into whatever his final form is.
Yeah.
Calamity.
It'd be a close
pig.
battle, I think.
Yeah, because he
Trying
doesn't have
to
the Master
remember.
Sword. Some scythe.
That's true.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think it's Ganon. Okay, you guys ready for the third match of the night?
Yeah.
Oh boy, let's do it.
Okay. Bayonetta versus Bowser. The Battle of the Bees, everybody.
Bayonetta.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah.
Her specialty is big, oversized, slow monsters, right?
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Bowser can
problem.
shoot fire, right? He's pretty strong.
I mean,
dodge it,
Bayonetta has
Dodge
guns
it,
on her
slow down
heels.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fine.
Bowser's kind of weak, honestly.
Are you saying
Jump on
that
his
because
bed
like
3
a short
times and-
Italian plumber can beat him?
Yeah, like, he's a weak dude. Bayonetta would school him. Are you kidding me?
That is interesting. I never thought about that in comparison, like, because he's a big, giant dinosaur monster, but at the same time, he gets whooped by this, like, just normal Italian dude.
Who only hits him like 3 times. You know,
And
it doesn't
remember,
even take a lot to
they
put him
are,
out.
the harder they fall. So all Bayonetta's got to do, knock them.
Just push him over on his shell.
He's just stuck there.
Yeah.
Yeah, he'll get stuck.
See it.
I wanted Bowser to win, but you're probably right. It's probably Bayonetta. Okay, that brings us down to I guess the final match of the night. I guess it'd be a 3-way, right?
It's not.
'Cause otherwise,
It's not how March Madness works. But I forgot this is March Mayhem. You're right.
or we can give somebody a bye. But here's the final 3 are Master Chief, Ganon, and Bayonetta.
Mm.
Oh,
And I kind of feel like, as much as I
Bayonetta
love
wins.
Master Chief, I don't think Master Chief would win in either of those fights, right?
Yeah.
So that again, Bayonetta.
So Ganon versus Master Chief. Would Master Chief win?
I think he could. I mean,
Really?
it's like you'd have to answer that question. One must ask who would win between Link and Master. Like Master Chief could tank Link, right? Like pretty easily.
Mm-hmm.
Just the same Geralt argument.
Oh
Like
yeah,
it's
you're
a guy
taking
with
the
a
Bowser
sword.
argument.
I
almost.
mean, he has. I don't know. I think Master Chief has a real. But I guess you don't fight like super big, scary enemies in Halo
I was
games.
going to say, I'm trying to think of, because I'm Team Master Chief, but I'm trying to think of like what in his weaponry could do the job, especially if
That's
it
true.
was like Calamity Ganon. You know what I mean? Because like Chief,
Energy sword.
yeah, I mean, yeah, that would be like, especially
Yeah.
the Halo 2 one. Like,
Yeah.
but he would have to get like close enough to him.
I guess he could throw out the energy sword and bat those things back at Ganon.
He could use a bubble shield too, like to especially if Ganon's just throwing the fire bolts or whatever. You know what I mean? He throws that down. He has a little bit of coverage there. This is closer than I think this is closer than I think we are. Bayonetta is the one where it's like, I don't know if I have a rationale on how Chief could win.
We can talk about Ganon and Chief for sure, but Bayonetta would win. She kills like multiple gods and celestial beings throughout 2 games. Like,
Okay, so you guys think
chance.
Bayonetta versus Ganon easy?
Yeah, Bayonetta wins.
Yeah. Again, yeah, Ganon is kind of her specialty, right?
Yeah.
Same deal. It's like, oh, no problem.
Oh wow, I didn't think it'd be so easy. All right,
She's real strong.
Yeah, she's real strong. But okay, so like hand to hand, Bayonetta and Chief, like that's kind of a put. Like, and her guns aren't going to get through his armor, but I think it's like that time slowing and hair ability that is.
And she could just turn into like whatever the hair monster thing that'll just chomp him.
Eat him up. Yeah.
I also do think her swords would get through his armor. They kill archangels, which in fiction, some of the most powerful beings to ever exist.
Fair.
If he shoots her though, does she have some kind of defense for that? Hair whip around.
She times her dodge at the exact moment the shot is fired, goes into which time she's got, roughly 4 seconds to unleash a quick attack on him, then enter the Umbran climax mode, eat him with her hair, gone, done deal. Bye, Master Chief, you idiot.
Wow. So she insults him at the end too?
Have you played Bayonetta? Yeah. Like, that's her whole thing, bro. Yeah. No problem.
I'm fine with Bayonetta beating Master Chief. Does that seem?
Yeah.
Alex, it feels like you're like scheming there. It's like,
more,
how does this gonna work?
I'm thinking,
You
what
can't take it.
What if
Idle.
I'm trying to think if there's any shot even after getting eaten though, do like a grenade from the inside. You know what I mean? Like really Jonah and the whale it, which I think
that's just like even at its worst, that's just a haircut for her. That's her hair. You know what I'm saying? Like,
would her hair like just explode? Like, when she does that, does her hair actually eat the person, or does it transport the person into some kind of like nether world?
It eats them and sends them to hell.
So his grenade would blow up in hell?
Is this how Chief becomes the Doomslayer? Is that the actual origin story? Whoa, that's wild.
Interesting.
Yeah,
I thought Chief was his older brother.
I don't know. We do now.
Did you see those photos?
No, I didn't. I haven't seen that.
They released some like weird Photoshop. It looked like they were brothers, and Master Chief was standing behind the Doomslayer. And it looked like the Doomslayer was the little brother in the photo, and it was just like some people were like, "Wait a minute, this isn't the Doom guy. Should not be the little brother."
Yeah. Huh. Interesting. Yeah. No, I don't know enough about Bayonetta to like come up with an argument against. So I think I have to cede.
Well, if Bayonetta wins against Master Chief and against Ganon, then I think we have to crown her the winner.
Yep, I like it.
I think that's
fine choice. Yeah.
Okay.
As God intended.
Bayonetta, grand champion of Game Informer's first March Mayhem. Don't you forget it, everyone. Thanks for writing and sending those submissions. We really appreciate it. You can't send us any more March Mayhem submissions until next year, but you can send us other emails. You can send us, we'll be doing character rankings again here at some point, and we'd love to get those. Podcast@GameInformer.com if you want to send those in. That brings us to the last segment of the show, a little segment we like to call Get Wrecked, where we recommend stuff to check out. Let's see. Alex, do you have anything you want to recommend?
We talked about it earlier in the show, but I do think right now on our YouTube channel, we have an overview of basically how upgrades work in Resident Evil Village. And especially if you guys are starved for a little bit more concrete gameplay outside of trailers, you know what I mean? I think this is a really great look at some of the more nitty gritty you're going to get into, right? And see some of those, you know, the animals in the wild and the village itself, right? Like we're giving you guys a first look really at the setting for one of the settings for this game, right? So definitely go check that out if you're a fan, or even if you're on the fence. I think it's doing some interesting stuff for people who like action as well. So
awesome. Cool. Kim, what about you?
Yeah, Marcus did a cool roundup from Nintendo's Indie World thing. So presentation, I should say. So if you want to see some of the games that are coming out that look really cool, I recommend checking that out. And if you're listening to this a day after the show goes live, we will have the first Supergiant piece up on the site for the making of Bastion. So get excited for that and check that out.
Yeah, that thing's awesome. You should definitely read it. I wanted to highlight Brian Shea wrote an opinion last week. It's called Zelda Breath of the Wild is just as brilliant today as it was in 2017. He kind of details his time with it and how he considers that game I think he considers it his favorite game of all time, period, actually. So not even one of, it's just the best game he's ever played. And he talks about how he went back to play it after all these years and he still finds it super magical and worth playing. So you can check that out online. Please do. Blake, what do you have to recommend?
The whole dang issue, baby. That thing was amazing. Go buy Game Informer issue 335 with Resident Evil on the cover. If you have to go to a brick and mortar store, wear 2 masks, practice safe social distancing and compliance with all COVID-19 regulations and rules, please go pick that up. Kim has 2 great pieces in there. There's a near retrospective and, of course, the Supergiant history. Ben, you wrote an amazing cover story on Resident Evil Village. And Liana wrote a behind-the-scenes making of the final Outer Worlds DLC, which I thought was very cool. It balanced being a preview and kind of a making of in a super awesome, engaging way. And then a whole bunch of great previews, reviews, top 10s. I wrote the table of contents.
Oh, you got to go for that.
Please read the table of contents. I put a lot of work into that. And go get the magazine. Please.
Cool. Greg, what about you? I mean, you guys are probably a little bit quieter these days because you just released a big game last year. People should probably check out Hades, I'm sure. But Is there anything you want to recommend if people are curious about you or the studio that they should check out? How should they follow you?
I mean, it's always best to check us out through our games, I guess. That's hopefully our games are interesting in kind of any order. And yeah, we're Supergiant Games on the internet, on Twitter and whatnot. We're a small team, so you can always kind of get in touch with us. Let us know what you think. We always love hearing from people about what you think about our stuff. Yeah, thanks so much.
Great. Well, yeah, thanks for being on the show. Anytime, come by.
You.
We appreciate it. All right. Well, that normally brings us to the end of the show where I would say goodbye and come back next week, but we still have that interview with Nadeshot, so we'd appreciate it if you stick around and listen to that. I think it's a good time. Otherwise, we'll see you next week. Thanks, everyone. Welcome back to the show, everybody. I have Alex, Stadnick, and Leanna are my wingmen for this section because we have a very special guest. You're probably familiar with them, maybe if you've been online recently in the last decade. Matthew Haag, Nadeshot. How's it going?
It's going really well. I'm honored. I appreciate you guys having me on board today.
Yeah, no problem. Glad to have you. We don't have a lot of pro esports players or professional business people or even just professionals on this show.
Definitely don't have that.
Yeah. So thanks for being here. Maybe just to give our listeners, because maybe not everybody's super familiar with who you are, maybe you can give our listeners just a quick overview of who you are, what you do. You kind of wear a lot of hats, I think.
Yeah, that started with Red Bull back in the day. They conditioned me. I was never a one that wore hats, but like the big deal about being a Red Bull athlete back in the day was only the athletes. I mean, I know I came from gaming, but they only allowed those individuals to wear the hat. And so it just sort of stuck with me through the years. I now work proudly with Rockstar Energy. But that was something that conditioned me. But yeah, I can give you a little bit of background. My name's Matthew Nadeshot Haag. I've been in the world of gaming, in the gaming industry for well over a decade. For me, I really loved video games growing up, and I wasn't very athletic, but I loved sports. I had an older brother who was taller than me, more athletic than me, and video games seemed to be the only thing I could beat him at. So it just kind of stuck with me. So my first game that I was really addicted to was Halo 2. That was back in like 2004 when I was still in grade school. And I just fell in love with the competition, the mechanics of like a first person shooter. And that continued to progress as I got older. And then I fell in love with Call of Duty in 2007. And that's really where my career began. I started playing at a super high level, started playing professionally. As the gaming industry continued to grow, events started getting bigger and bigger, more prize money. So I did that for about 7 years and made a pretty good living for myself. But at the same time, I really wanted to share my gameplay with others. So I started streaming on Twitch before it was even Twitch, on Justin TV. I started making YouTube videos that were inspired by like SportsCenter Top 10. I really just want to show people how good I was at the game I loved. And then the content boom is like I like to call it. You know, it was like the big bang of just content from every direction. So I really feel like I hit the right wave at the right time. I played for a team called Optic Gaming for the majority of my career. Had a lot of great years there, a lot of great memories, a lot of videos that were created for YouTube that I can still go back and watch. But then I spread my wings, moved out to LA, retired from professional gaming, started just creating videos about broader topics besides gaming, you know, sneakers, cars, anime, anything I was really interested in. I figured my audience would be interested in them too. We were the same age. And then 100 Thieves sort of fell into my lap. I really just want to start an apparel company that can differentiate itself from Nadeshot. I felt like Nadeshot was so personalized and so personal to just me. I wanted to create a broader collective that would be more encompassing to my audience, so that they could feel like they were a part of it too. And then I had one of my friends who actually was a fan of mine growing up, who was a really savvy investor. And he's like, look, man, I love your business. I love 100 Thieves. I think it should be more. So I jumped back in esports. He really like twisted my arm. We brought on some money. We brought on some talent. We brought on some employees and some teams and players and coaches. And over the last 3 years, we've been. Yeah, and Drake. Yeah, Drake was a good part of that too. Thanks for the reminder. Yeah. So yeah, that's a long story short. As quick as synopsis I can give you: professional gaming, esports, apparel. That's really what I do now.
Yeah, no, perfect overview. Do you and your brother still play games? Do you still kick his ass?
Oh no. He strayed away after we went to Madden 2004 is when Mike Vick was on the cover, and he was convinced that was the only game he'd probably be better than me at. And we played when we got home. We went to the midnight release, and I won a game on a game-winning field goal. I don't think he's played a video game with me since. He didn't talk to me for a week.
Amazing. Yeah, it sounds like me and my brother, although he sometimes wins against me. Yeah, just to dive into your background just a tad bit more, famously you worked at McDonald's before kind of making it big online, and you went to a community college and you grew up in Chicago. Sounds like you were kind of had a normal Midwest kid upbringing, and then
Yep.
you transitioned into now you're this internet celebrity. What was that transition like?
Oh, well, you know what? I've always felt very grounded just because it happened slowly. A lot of people can look at my career now and just see like it was a whirlwind. But for me, you bring up working at McDonald's and going to community college. I mean, I was dead broke. I was making like $7.30 an hour. My parents, they kept me very disciplined. They were great parents. My dad was a carpenter. He's still working to this day. My mom was a secretary at the hospital. So like super normal upbringing in the Midwest. And I just feel like I caught a lot of lucky breaks. I think in a lot of ways you could have good ideas and you could be as motivated as possible and work really hard, but some things need to turn your way. And I just feel like I hit the right wave at the right time. My age and falling in love with video games and really spending my whole life doing it. Who would have thought that it would have happened at the moment when video games really went global from a content and accessibility standpoint? So I always feel very fortunate where I ended up. I mean, like I said, I hated school, and just the ability to drop out of college and to pursue something I love. Not many people get that opportunity. So I feel very blessed and very fortunate that I wound up here.
Yeah, do you feel like those business classes are still pretty helpful though? The fact that you had some of that?
There were no business classes. No, man, I was taking like Greek mythology 101 and film,
basket weaving.
Yeah, exactly. I was just trying to get my credit hours completed, and then hopefully in those 2 years move on to a bigger university and figure out what I wanted to do. But no, I mean, I that didn't help at all, actually.
Well, it helped you figure out you didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point. That was definitely a learning lesson. Great point.
I love the fact. Okay, so you kind of brought up a good point. This is something that we talk about a lot, especially with the media side, is a lot of people see a person at the point of success and they don't really get to see the journey that brought there. And one thing that I've seen over the course of your career is just a lot of perseverance. Anybody in the public eye gets a lot of hate thrown their way. Sometimes it becomes being a scapegoat. Sometimes it becomes just people just hyper scoping everything you do. But one thing I really like too is that I've seen you talk about this publicly of, sometimes you've run into hardships and instead of just feeling really defeated, you kind of dealt with it publicly. Like you've always been very open with your fans and your community, and you've always been able to turn it into a positive. But one thing I think a lot of people might not know is that, earlier in your career, you kind of went through a really dark time. I would say around the 2012 era. And you lost somebody really important to you. Can you talk a little bit about that and kind of how that shaped your direction and how that's inspired you even today? Because I've heard you talk about it a lot, and it's really inspiring, I think.
Well, yeah, I appreciate that. I think for me, what you're referring to, back in 2012, my mom passed away, and she was sick for a lot of years, and we never really knew what was wrong with her. I mean, it's really like it almost feels like straight out of a movie. At one point she had a seizure while she was driving and she broke vertebrae in her back, and then she had to have surgery. She had carpal tunnel at one point. We found out she was epileptic, hypoglycemia, low blood sugar. And it was just a combination of terrible things happening to her body and just very unfortunate. But I never really expected her to pass away. It was actually like one thing that I always remember vividly. My mom, a couple of times, she would have a seizure. And, for a young kid, you don't really understand what's happening. You just see your mom convulsing in a chair. And at one point, it happened while my dad was away. He was building a racetrack in Indiana. So he was out of town. And my mom or my brother and my sister, they had both gone away to college already. And I was home alone, and this seizure happened. And the one thing when she came out of it and was being taken away on a stretcher, she's like, I'm not going to die. I'm not going to die. Don't worry about it. She was always a really strong, hearted woman that, she always seemed like she was fighting. And then when the time actually came, it was definitely a shock to me and a shock to the rest of the family. It was really hard to deal with. I mean, you mentioned before the podcast that you lost somebody in your life, one of your parents, and it's something that everybody's going to go through at some point, and there's no avoiding it. Time, we can't escape it. And so for me, I actually think in a lot of ways I was fortunate to go through it at that age and that point in time in my life. Of course, I would have loved to have decades more with my mother, but seemingly the worst possible thing that could have happened to me happened at a young age, and I figured out how to bounce back and deal with it. And you mentioned, a lot of things happening in the public eye. That was something that I was compelled to share with my audience back then because it was such a life-altering moment for me. And the internet had always been my outlet. When I was younger, I was never the most social individual. I had a hard time making friends. It just, it was like trying to figure out a complex math equation, like going up and talking to somebody that I don't know seemed like the most intimidating thing in the world. And on the internet, when I was alone in my bedroom, it just seemed like I could say anything and be myself no matter what. And that's why, for me, at that moment in my life, having a smaller audience on Twitch and a YouTube audience that was there to console me and help me through that time of my life, I'm so grateful that the internet existed for those reasons. And so that's why I've always been super open and straightforward with my audience, just because it's how I started, and that connection that I have to them and my community has gotten me through a lot of tough times in my life. And I feel like sharing those moments actually will probably help other people that are in similar positions, that are going through similar things. Obviously, probably different circumstances, but at the end of the day, we can all learn from each other. And there's at least someone you can look forward to that has gone through something similar. So that's really been my mindset through the accessibility and the candidness that I've always had. And I think it's helped me build like a stronger audience because of it. And it was never really intentional. It sort of just fell into my lap, and that's how it panned out.
Very natural, which is nice because I feel like, with the public spaces, there's a lot of people trying to portray a certain thing, but you've always been really authentic, and that comes through a lot. It comes through in a lot of your work with 100 Thieves too. I've heard a lot of people underneath your umbrella of 100 Thieves talk about like what an empathetic leader you are and how they feel taken care of. I'm kind of interested to learn more about your philosophy with that. Like, how do you stay grounded? How, you mentioned that it's been a slow progress, so that's been kind of easy, but how do you stay grounded? How do you make sure that everybody that is working alongside you is taken care of and remain such a positive influence on the people around you?
Well, I think for me, 100 Thieves, the reason why I started, I mentioned at the beginning, I don't even think I mentioned it to you guys. I think what was so important about 100 Thieves and why I was so excited about it is, one, conceptually, I wanted to build a brand that people felt like they were a part of as well. But when you're working as a content creator, in a lot of ways, I was like an independent contractor, and I'd work with brands, hopefully make some money. And when you work on your own YouTube channel and you're streaming, you're very isolated and you're working alone a lot. And I went through some lulls where I was just, locked away in my bedroom or my apartment for so long without even seeing anybody. That affects you mentally. And so for me, I wanted to build a brand where I could work with other like-minded individuals, and they could help me build towards a common goal. And I think collaboration was something that I was really yearning for. And I found it here at 100 Thieves. I have the honor of working with some really smart individuals that are talented, that are passionate about gaming, who have grown to love 100 Thieves through the time that they've spent here. And I think the way that I function the best is just trying to be as down to earth as possible. I'm not very good in situations where people take things too seriously. I like to goof around and have fun. And there's good days and there's bad days. Like sometimes, you got to deal with things at work that are more serious than others. But I'm never going to be the one that's presenting like a PowerPoint, working on an Excel spreadsheet and answering emails all day. It just isn't in my DNA. I got to be in front of the camera and be hanging out with people and just. Can I swear on here?
Hell yeah!
Have a bleep
Get
button.
it?
Yeah, I like to bullshit, And so for me, it's if employees like working with me, hopefully they know it's just because I don't take this too seriously. Obviously, if everybody gets their work done, then we've got no issues. But I'm definitely not like the operator of the company. Like really, where I strive or where I do my best work is when I'm working on the creative and the direction of the content and how the brand feels and how people perceive it. But I have some really great people that are great managers that help people in their career and help them progress and become better managers and better employees. But it's not my expertise at all. Like I said, I've never worked a real job besides McDonald's. I didn't even make it as a manager working there for 4 years. So I just like to have fun, and hopefully people enjoy working here. And if they do, then my job is done.
If you went back to McDonald's today, you think you could still make a hamburger?
No. Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Did you make us hamburgers? We're hungry.
I'll make you a cheeseburger. Though the thing is, I go into the drive-thrus and I'd get upset because of how slow it's going. I would run that drive-thru with like a world record. I mean, that's where I worked, was the drive-thru, and then sometimes I'd work in the grill. But it's a lot of multitasking, which is why I think I was good at. You're taking orders while plugging everything in, taking the money. It's not that easy in a job. Obviously anybody can figure it out, but you got to work pretty hard, and that's why I think it was such a good job for him. But yeah, I can make you a burger.
Perfect. Yeah. Did you get competitive behind the scenes? Were you trying to make burgers faster than everybody else? Take more.
Well,
orders?
yeah.
McDonald's.
The camaraderie of it for sure. I was lucky because a lot of the managers that I had at McDonald's were, they were either in college or just a few years out of college, like trying to figure out what was next, or maybe they were going to work there for the rest of their lives. But they were all very fun, and they helped me crack out of my shell and be more social. I actually attribute that first job into being able to talk to people because I was terrified. I was mortified of having to start a conversation with somebody, and you got no choice there. So I always tell people, man, if you were like me, go get a job. You put money in your pocket. In most cases, depending on who your parents are, they can't really tell you much to do much longer. If you got money in your pocket and you're getting good grades in school, get enough money, move out, do whatever you want. Stay close to your family if that was what works for you. But when you got money in your pocket, you can do whatever you want.
For sure. Yeah, you were one of the best Call of Duty players in the world. But at the level that you were competing at, you just had a target on your back, I'm sure. So if you missed a game-winning shot, you became the target that the whole internet would dogpile on. And for someone who said I had trouble getting out of my shell, I just feel like that would be hard to deal with. How did you manage the criticism that was online?
Yeah, it was always hard to deal with. I think throughout the years, if you grow up on the internet, you tend to build thick skin. I would say it gets easier and easier and easier to deal with criticism. But I was pretty self-conscious growing up about my height and stuff. So I felt like I had already gone through that at that time in my life. But it never, I guess it never gets easier to hear criticism because you can't avoid it. And in some ways, there are truths to people's criticism as long as it's rational and logical and fair. But it's something that you dwell on. And I think that it's actually part of the reason why I retired, because I was just so tired of being the scapegoat, even though I felt like, hold on, motion sensor is on the lights. Hold on. Actually, that looks okay. No, but
special effects. It's fine.
Yeah, right. Not as good as yours. But I don't know, man. That's a tough question because for me now, I'm in such a different stage of my life where if people criticize the things that I do, I just don't care anymore. I'm doing the things that I love, and I'm doing it for me, and I'm doing it for the company. I'm doing it for our employees and stuff. And so back then, since I was so competitive, when people would criticize me, it was tough to deal with. And I started to get over it, but it got to a certain point. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to go make more money making videos that I actually have fun making. And there's not much to criticize when you're making a YouTube video about unboxing a pair of sneakers, right? So I'm like, I'm hightailing my ass out of here. I'm done. So, yeah, I don't know. That's a tough question. You just got to have thick skin. That's the best I can say it. It's still, no one ever is going to fully just be ignorant to people's criticism, but you deal with it better as you get older. You stop caring less.
Is that one of your biggest pieces of advice you'd give to people looking to get into the space?
Yeah, I would say that for sure. One thing that my parents really drove into my head, or at least I got to see with them, they were hard class people. And so when people would, give them a hard time, if they were ever dealing with any situations where, there was adversity, they were like, listen, you're going to get older and you're not going to care about what these people think about you because you're going to have your own shit that you got to deal with and you got to worry about. And so I think that's something that I've definitely learned as I've gotten older. the more experience you have and the more things you go through your life, you realize that things that people are saying about you or about the game that you have or the way that you're presenting yourself online, I mean, it really doesn't matter. We're all going to leave in a casket one day anyways. I know that's a little morbid, but like,
It's facts.
what are we worried about? You know, like if you don't like what I do, then I'll just block you. I don't care. Like that's the advice I could give as best as I can give it. Just who cares?
I'm going out in a
Marine,
creative
so I
action
appreciate
thing.
that. I appreciate that. Like you're just gonna leave in a casket because that's definitely true.
Unless you get cremated.
Unless you get
That's true.
cremated.
That's true.
And just sprinkle your ashes wherever you want.
Wherever they
I'm
may
going to
fly.
get cream corned. That's
Cream
my-
Oh
corn?
my God.
That's-
Oh,
What
not
does that
eat
even entail?
Yeah.
Is that going to go on the burger that you ordered?
Oh,
Oh,
That's
my
weird.
God.
This is
What is
getting
it?
weird.
Is it like cremated ashes and embalming fluid? How do you make? I don't. How do you make creamed corn ashes? That sounds weird.
Hey, it's not my
I like
problem.
it.
Somebody else is going to have to figure that out. It's in my will, though.
there you go.
Okay.
Matthew, you talked about in 2017, you founded 100 Thieves, which you kind of referred to as a clothing company. You said it fell into your lap. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, yeah. So I was 100 Thieves Apparel really started from a young kid sending me a windbreaker that he created himself. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I got to talk to this kid. So I paid him for the design and we sold it and it did really, really well. And so 100 Thieves was like catching steam and getting more and more popular. And so I have a friend, his name is Blake Robbins, and he's a successful venture capitalist for a fund called Ludlow Ventures. And so what venture capitalists do is they inject money that they've raised from like high net worth families or companies, and they allow companies to grow through capital. And so he reached out to me and was like, look, man, I think you need to jump back into esports. And here's how you're going to do it. I'm going to help you create a pitch deck. One of our investors is Dan Gilbert, who's an owner of Quicken Loans and the Cleveland Cavaliers. I'm going to fly you out to the NBA finals and I want you to pitch 100 Thieves to him in this boardroom. So I'm like, all right. I hopped on the plane. I'm like, yeah, I want to go see the Cavs versus the Warriors. And so he really walked me through this deck. And I mean, obviously I knew everything there was to know about esports. I think there are certain aspects about the business that I always had questions in my mind, like how is this actually going to work? Like how can teams become profitable one day? Just because I had seen it all on Optic and I knew that it was a really tough business to make money, especially with how high the salaries were becoming. But when we started talking through what the apparel business could look like and what content could look like, and that was something that I knew a lot about because I had been doing it for years as well. And it started to make more sense. So we pitched the company, a couple months later after negotiating the terms. Dan Gilbert led our seed series and we started hiring. And we got into the LCS through like a 70-page application, over 100 sports franchises and high net worth families applied for. And we were one of the 4 teams that they accepted. And that was really like, okay, it's time to hit the ground running. So that's what I mean when it sort of fell into my lap. I had a really smart kid who watched my videos growing up, who had found success on his own, and he wanted to help me. So I was very grateful for that.
Did you send that kid a package of goodies afterwards? Like,
oh, we're
thanks
best
for my
friends
company?
now. We're best friends now. This kid, Blake Robbins, he's like one of the best follows you can make on Twitter because he grew up on the internet in the same way as I do, but he just really understands the world of tech, and he's very progressive in the way that he thinks through companies and trends on the internet. And so even now he helps me invest, like angel invest in companies that he finds that are really exciting. So, I mean, if I never would have met Blake Robbins, I don't know what I would be doing. So if you guys ever need a really compelling, thought-provoking follow on Twitter, go follow Blake Robbins because, I mean, I told him, you're going to be a billionaire before me. I don't even think I'll ever be a billionaire. But if and when you become a billionaire, you got to buy me a really nice car and a nice watch. And I'm basically like twisting his arm into an agreement.
I wanted to ask, we should touch on this too. You recently announced a partnership with Excedrin. Do you want to talk about what this is?
Yeah, I would love to. So the reason why I thought working with Excedrin was going to be amazing is when they approached me individually, they really talked about and mental health and physical health. You know, when I was competing back in the day, there were moments on stage where I was personally dealing with headaches that if I told my audience that, they probably would have thought it was an excuse. But there were things that I wasn't doing back then that would have helped me greatly just by taking some simple steps. And so what Excedrin has done is really put together a mindful gaming routine that I really love. And I think it's important that younger people actually see it. And it's not even for individuals that play video games, but I think all of us dealing with stay-at-home orders during this pandemic and spending a lot of time in front of a screen, there are a few simple steps that you can do that can really minimize and mitigate troubles with your health that you might find later down the road. And some of the few that I really love is deep breathing. Deep breathing is something that I really dove into aggressively just because it helps with my anxiety that I've dealt with in the past. You know, for me, it was really bad after my mother passed away, and it's gotten a lot better now. And whenever I seem like it's creeping back into my mind, deep breathing really helps a lot. And then even from a video game perspective, when I was competing, I was always a very pessimistic and cynical person. I always expected the worst. Obviously, I was hoping for the best, but I always expected the worst. And mindful thinking and positive affirmations and really trying to manifest positive thoughts has helped me quite a bit throughout my career and even just my everyday life, and trying to have a more stable and more positive outlook about what the results might be at the end of this meeting or at the end of this video or at the end of this apparel drop. And that certainly would have helped me a lot when I was competing. And then honestly, one of the things that just seems so obvious, but is so core to what I love is playing music and just keeping yourself out of this atmosphere that can cause a lot of pressure and cause a lot of anxiety and could lead to headaches down the road. I listen to music 24/7. It's something that I was super passionate about as a kid and didn't realize how much I was going to love it even more as I got an adult or became an adult. So I've jumped into so many different genres. And it's always a way for me to stay out of my head, stay out of my own thoughts. And there's a bunch of other steps that you can take and you can read more about it at excedrin.com/gaming. I promise you that's not a plug, but they are very simple routines that you can build throughout your day that can help you just feel better mentally and physically as you go throughout your workday, or whether you're playing gaming or you're playing video games, whatever the case may be. I promise you it'll help. So their authentic approach to actually stepping in gaming in a meaningful way, I think that's what resonated for me the most, and why I'm excited to be working with them.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that the tip isn't just take some Excedrin. That's not the extent of the whole thing. That there's more steps you can take there, and and Excedrin's a fine product. I've used it before, but yeah, there's other things to keep in mind while you're gaming. Even just like me, a scrub who's not like a professional gamer, there's times where I'm definitely looking at screens all day, and that affects you. Yeah,
absolutely. I definitely think Excedrin is taking more of a holistic approach and trying to help individuals in the gaming community. I mean, I've definitely taken Excedrin before, and it helps eliminate those headaches that just don't seem to go away. And I really just love their initiative. So if people check it out, I think they'll be surprised how those little tips and cues throughout the day that you can remind yourself to do will help in the long run.
Well, Matthew, really appreciate you being on the show. Thanks for being here.
For real.
Yeah, hey, to be honest with you guys, I do a lot of these, maybe not as many of these interviews, but you guys ask some great questions, and I appreciate that. For me, when I do media or any type of podcast, it's usually the same old typical questions, and those are very refreshing and reminded me why I'd love to make content. So thank you. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, they're good at their jobs, and I'm here for the ride.
And talking about burgers.
But thank you out there, too, for watching or listening to this episode of the GI Show. We really appreciate it. Please like and subscribe, or subscribe to our magazine. Whatever you do, come back next week. We'll have another episode. Until then, game on.
Hey, friends. Your friendly neighborhood Alex here. I just want to let you know that if you enjoyed the interview with Nadeshot, you're in luck, because we have almost half an hour more with him that we're going to release on YouTube later this week. So be sure to come back for that. And thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Game on.